Mic test. Hello? Ayan. Ayan mga kabanat. So ang video na ito mga kabanat ay ito yung ginawang pagdinig kahapon. So na-miss kasi ako, hindi ko napansin na wala kasing announce na nagkaroon din pala ng pagdinig sa Kongreso o sa Kamara itong issue patungkol sa overpriced na pagbili ng PPE, itong PSDBM at kasama na dyan Department of Health. Sa pamumuno ni na Congressman Aglipay at si Congressman Marcolita ay dininig din nila itong overpriced na pagbili ng PPE. Parang hindi sila conforme o hindi sila komportable sa ginawang pagdinig doon sa Senado. Kaya nagkaroon din sila nagpagdinig at nga sa pamumuno ni na Aglipay at dumalo din sina Congressman dumari din sina ang tawag nito, sina Doke, Lau at iba pang kawani, pati itong si Perer ay dumaro din. Pero parang hindi ko napansin dito mga kabanat. Doon na hindi ko rin ito napanood kasi kaka-download ko lang. At ipakita ko sa inyo via live itong nangyaring pagdinig nga. Siguro napanood nyo rin ito, pero sa kabatiran ng hindi pa nakakalam, at pagmagandang panoorin natin ulit at makita natin itong issue. Ano ba talaga yung kanilang dininig dito? At ang wala dito mga kabanat, yung Parmali, yung mga head ng Parmali, yung mga hindi kasama dito, hindi sila na-involve dito sa pag hindi sila pinatawag mga kabanat. Ang pinatawag lang nila dito yung mga kawani ng halimbawa yung mga PSDB. Pero sa kabatiran natin para ma-sure natin kung kasama talaga, kasi hindi ko rin naman ito na-review pa lahat. Panoorin na lang natin ito mga kabanat. I-play ko na.
Via Zoom, we are
comment mga kabanat ko yung audio ay malinaw ba o hindi para maayos natin kaagad mga kabanat. So maraming salamat.
By Representative Mario Vittorio, Marvy Marino, Representative Hilacosa Jr., the Senior Vice Chairman and Senior Deputy Majority Leader Jesus Crispin Remulla, Deputy Majority Leader John Marvin Yules Servo Nieto,
So skip na lang natin
Deputy
ito.
Speaker Prosper Pichay, Representative Alfredo Garbin
Ko na lang ito
Jr.,
kasi nagbabatian din naman sila so medyo mahaba. So para madali matapos.
Secretary and OIC of DBM Procurement Service, Attorney Lloyd Christopher Lau. We are also joined via Zoom by Secretary Carlito G. Galvez, the Chief Implementer and Vaccine SAR of the National Task Force Against COVID-19. We also have Deputy Ombudsman Warren Rex Leong, from the BIR, Commissioner Cesar Ardulay, from the we are also joined by the Food and Drug Administrator, Director General Eric Domingo, from the BOC, Commissioner Ray Leonard Guerrero, also from the DBMPS, Joshua S. Laure, from Pharmally,
Kain muna ako mga kabanat.
Pharmaceutical Corporation, we are joined.
Ayun, andyan palang Parmali. Sorry medyo mali. Hindi ko kasi na-review talaga to
Mr.
Sorry.
Lincoln Ong. Also joining us via Zoom is the EMS Component Assembly Incorporated President, Mr. Ferdinand Ferrer. The DBM Director Ryan Lita is also joining us via Zoom. We have from the GPPB, Ms. Melissa Santiago, and also the Executive Director of GPPB, Rowena Candice Ruiz. And we also, Secretary Duque is also joined by the Undersecretary Mirna Cabotaje. Your Honors.
Good morning. Before we start, we invite any of our resource persons, in particular from the Executive Department. They have preliminary statements on the subject of inquiry, which has been indicated in their letter of invitation. May we call on Secretary Duque or Secretary Carlito Galvez?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Am I clear, Mr. Chairman, Your Honor?
Yes,
Can you
sir.
hear me?
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
thank you. Thank you, Your Honor, Mr. Chairperson, Michael Edgar Aglipay, to the honorable members of the committee and my fellow public servants. A good morning to all. I wish to express my sincerest gratitude to the committee for your continued and tireless fulfillment of our responsibility to ensure honesty and hard work across the whole of government service. Your Honors, the circumstances of 2020 had a profound impact on the health and economic situation, yet we are thankful for the Department of Budget and Management's procurement service intercession, which has generously stepped in to augment procurement activities of the department at a time of absolute necessity. Our agencies joined forces to provide the much needed personal protective equipment of our healthcare workers at the time, and thousands of them have benefited from the entire government's efforts. We set a high standard for ourselves when it comes to the audit precisely because we know of its value in good governance. The observations and findings reflected in the report are recommendations the department endeavors to comply with in the time for the conclusion of the audit process and with the inputs from this august body. We believe we can further make headway towards doing so. We assure the committee that we are wholly committed to this process and will do well to demonstrate our duty to transparency and truthfulness in public service. The trust and confidence of the Filipino people are dependent on this, and we hope to honor this in all aspects of our work, as this is our sworn oath as public servants. We will do all that we can to address the relevant audit findings and the matters that arise on the floor, in hopes this no longer divides our people and casts any further doubts, instead unifies us in our fight against a ravaging pandemic. Again, Your Honors, we are grateful for your call to truthful service and for this opportunity to demonstrate our dedication to the same. On behalf of the Department of Health, Your Honors, we thank you for your continued support to our agency and the entire health sector. Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Chairman, for this opportunity.
Thank you, Secretary Galvez. Wala pa? Secretary Galvez, do you have an opening statement? Secretary Vince Dizon, do you have a statement? Wala pa yan.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, yes, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Gusto lang po naming sigundahan. Unang-una po, nagpapadala po ng pag-unawa at pag-intindi si Secretary Charlie Galvez. Siya po ay kasulukuyang nasa Senado po sa kanyang budget hearing. Pero pipilitin po niyang makahabol, Mr. Chairman, sa ating hearing ngayong umaga. Pero on his behalf po, gusto lang po naming dalawang sigundahan on behalf of the National Task Force, yung pong sinabi ni Secretary Duque na wini-welcome po namin ang hearing na ito ng House of Representatives Committee on Good Governance para po talagang lumabas ang katotohanan at para po maipaliwanag ng mabuti ng ating mga iba't ibang kawani ng gobyerno tulad ng DOH at ng Department of Budget and Management Procurement Service para malaman po ng ating mga kababayan at ng mga members po natin ang totoong nangyari at ang mga circumstances at konteksto nung pagbili ng mga kinakailangang mga supply nung kapanahunang una tayong tinamaan ng COVID-19 nung early part po of 2020. Nagpapasalamat po kami sa inyo at nandito po kami para mag-cooperate ng taus-puso sa komite at sa lahat ng miyembro ng House of Representatives. Maraming salamat po, Mr. Chairman.
Kay Chairman Aguinaldo po ng COA.
Magandang umaga po, Mr. Chairman, and to the members of the committee. Ang masasabi ko lang po is Wala po sa COA report ng PSDBM ang statement na may overpricing po. There's no statement to that. The observations related more to inventory management than overpricing. So hindi po tama na sabihin ang COA ang nagsabi na may overprice kasi wala pong sinabi yon doon sa report. Anyway, nandito po kami to be able to provide clarification to any of the questions the committee members may ask. Magandang umaga po.
Yes, thank you. Next to give the opening statement, DBMPS. Is there anyone from the DBMPS? Or yung mga
Mr. Chairman.
Who's this, sir?
Director Jolas Butas, Director for Operations. May I just state that unfortunately, Attorney Jason Marwayan, our OIC Executive Director, cannot attend as he needs to attend to an urgent emergency matter in his family. Also here with me is Director Joshua Laure, the OIC Director for the Admin and Finance. The part of the PSDBM, we welcome ongoing investigation by the House of Representatives. We shall fully cooperate and provide the necessary clarification and requested documents. Thank you, Your Honors.
Thank you. As informed to the committee secretariat, Mr. Warren Leong has requested that he be given 10 minutes for an opening statement. So, Mr. Attorney Warren Leong, what is your position, sir, and what is your involvement in this hearing today? You are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am here not as a deputy ombudsman, but in my capacity as a former director of PSDBM. I welcome the hearing, Your Honor, and thank the committee for the opportunity to clarify the confusion. So what is the confusion? The confusion is that PSDBM and the government used bayanihan law to procure the COVID-19 response items. And yet the questions that are being propounded or we are asked to comply with Republic Act 9184 related documentation, processes, and procedures. So what does Bayanihan 1 say? Section 4K of Bayanihan 1 states that the President is authorized to procure the most expeditious manner as exemptions from Republic Act 9184 or the Government Procurement Law and other relevant laws. So should there be doubt about Bayanihan 1 or what should apply in the procurement process? There should be none because Section 7 of the same law states that in case of conflict with another statute, order, rules, or regulations, the provisions of Bayanihan 1 shall prevail. So what do all of this means? This means, Your Honor, that the Legislative Department recognized the need to give the President the power to procure in the most expeditious manner given the extraordinary circumstances. That is why we procured under Bayanihan law, Your Honors. Later on, may I be given the opportunity to present a PowerPoint, Your Honor, prepared by the PSDBM. Thank you.
Mr. Attorney Warren Leong, so you are now with the Ombudsman, right?
Correct, Mr. Chairman.
So pag makadating tong kaso na to sa Ombudsman, what will be your participation in that case since you will be part of the accused?
First of all, Mr. Chairman, there's actually no conflict of interest because the overall Deputy Ombudsman is not actually handling cases involving high-ranking officers. If I would say in layman's terms, I'm more like a VP for Admin and Finance in private corporations. I also handle low-ranking. I'm also the final signatory
Yes,
for
sir.
low-ranking.
Pero nevertheless, Attorney Leong, you are still with the organization. Don't you think you should inhibit in that if ever makarating dyan?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I was going to that po. I will inhibit po. Nevertheless, if for any reason it comes to my desk, I will voluntarily inhibit.
Thank you. Thank you. As you mentioned, you are requesting that you will present a PowerPoint. Considering the agenda today is after the resource persons have spoken, it will now be the turn of the congressman to propound questions in the interpellation. So this is the only time we can allow a PowerPoint. Can you limit to 10 minutes, sir?
Yes, Your Honor, I will limit it to, I will shorten my presentation and skip some slides.
Thank you,
Your
sir.
Honor.
Please proceed.
Okay. So first slide, I call on relevant agencies to ensure speedy delivery of basic medical supplies, equipment to health facilities from the approval, importation, and to the delivery. Everything must go smoothly to make sure that we do not waste time. So that was the marching order of the President. He repeated this in the President's talk to the people dated March 24, 2020. Balikan po natin ang sitwasyon ng mga unang buwan ng pandemya. So these are newspaper clippings. You don't have, we presented it here so that you will have better complex po. March 31, 2020, CNN Philippine staff, medical group cites protective equipment lack for death of 17 doctors. Like wartime, Philippine doctors overwhelmed by coronavirus deluge. COVID-19 cases among healthcare workers now at 1,245. Death toll at 27, April 27, 2020. We will have nothing. Lung Center of the Philippines, please for PPE suits and gowns amid depleting supplies. March 23 po, 2020. Coronavirus in the Philippines, health workers, protective equipment, fear, exposure. Kulang ang supply ng mga personal protective equipment sa buong mundo. Coronavirus sparks a war for mass accusations fly. So on this one, there was accusations that other nations are getting supplies intended for another country. Protective equipment costs increased over 1,000% amid competition and surge in demand. Kailangan nating makahanap ng supply. So these are some of the pictures. The Southern Philippines Medical Association is seeking for donations. We are asking for masks.
Sir, Sir Warren, naka-mute po kayo, hindi kayo marinig. Pwedeng unmute. Wala pong audio from Sir Warren.
Yes, sorry about that.
Yes, please repeat.
Issue number 1. Overpriced ba talaga ang face mask at PPE na binibili ng gobyerno noong 2020? Hindi po. Face mask, dahil tumaas ang presyo ng face mask noong umpisa po ng pandemya, naglagay po ang DOH ng price freeze at suggested retail price. So price freeze was placed at 28 pesos.
Wow.
Halaga po ng binili ng gobyerno ay 27.72. Some were actually lower. So as you can see in the slides, in March 16, 2020, the price freeze was at 28 pesos. In August 10, 2020, the price freeze was still at 28 pesos. Totoo bang merong face mask na may halagang 1350 na kayang isupply ng mga local manufacturers noong Abril 2020? Wala po. Noong April 2020, nagkakahirapan po tayo sa supply. Yung pong supply natin sa ating awardee na si EMS, it was only delivered in June 1. The contract was entered in April 27, 2020. And then the first delivery was supposed to be scheduled in May 25. That's about more than a month. And then the actual delivery was done on June 1, 2020. So as you can see, it was not immediately available, and we gave them time to produce. Presyo ng personal protective equipment. So, ito po, pinapakita po natin yung mga purchase orders nung presyo ng wala pang pandemya. So, September 28, 2015, the price is at 3,500 each. June 2016, the price is at 3,864 each. Nung may pandemya na po, at around May 2020, we procured 1,910 pesos each. We are not saying that the 3,500 and 3,800 are overpriced. What we are saying is that this forms part of the historical record, historical data of DOH, and then this was cleared by COA. If this is not overpriced, and this was cleared, with more reason po, ang 1,910 procured during pandemic, procured using emergency procurement, is reasonable. So ang laman po ng bawat PPE set. So nung June 2016, 3,800 po ang presyo, meron po tayong 8-piece set. So goggles, glove, shoe covers, coverall, surgical gown, and 95 surgical mask at head cap. Nung May 8 po, 1,910, 9-piece set po ito, face shield, gloves, shoe cover, coverall, gown, and 95, surgical mask, head cover, and apron. Ito po ang halimbawa ng mga PPE sets. I'll go over this quickly lang po since I'm under time constraints. Issue number 2. Dumaan ba sa tamang proseso ng emergency procurement ang pagbili ng mask at PPE? Opo, sumunod po ang PSDBM sa proseso ng emergency procurement under Bayanihan 1. So what is Bayanihan 1? This is the Bayanihan 1. You can immediately Google this. Section 4A provides that undertake procurement of the following items as the need arises in the most expeditious manner as exemptions from the provisions of Republic Act number 9184 or the Government Procurement Reform Act and other relevant laws. So these are the goods enumerated. In case of doubt, you go to Section 7. Yun lang po ang dalawang provisions ni Bayanihan 1 when it comes to procurement of goods. So this one, Section 53 under RA 9184. This is included in the exemption from Bayanihan 1 because it states exemptions from Republic Act 9184 and other relevant laws. So na-exempt na po tayo kahit sa alternative mode of procurement na negotiated procurement under RA 9184. So this is the issuance of a state of public emergency. I will skip this one. Paano napili ang mga suppliers? Paano po napili ang mga suppliers under negotiated procurement or under Bayanihan 1? So sagot, pinili po natin under Bayanihan 1, we were allowed to directly negotiate. But we still underwent market price analysis. So pinili po natin yung mga kayang makapag-deliver agad or at least at the nearest possible time, pinakamababang presyo base sa mga quotation na nakuha sa mga suppliers na kayang mag-deliver sa tamang oras, and dapat po compliant po sa technical specifications ng DOH. Hindi naman po si PSDBM ang nagsasabi kung ano ang bibilihin at kung ano ang technical specifications. nakalagay po yan sa purchase request ng ating end user. So it has to be compliant. Ano ang hinihingi ng PSDBM? So we're asking for mayor's permit, ITR, price quotation, omnibus warrant statement, and compliance to the technical specifications. Kahit po hindi nakasaad sa Bayanihan 1 na mag-market survey, ang PSDBM naglagay po talaga ng layer na we do market price analysis. So the first level, for the first level of ensuring that there's no overpricing, we take into consideration po yung APR ng ating end user. Si DOH po ito. So nakalagay po sa purchase request ang items na bibilihin, quantity, unit cost, and the total cost. Hindi po tayo pwede sumobra doon. It presupposes also that our end user already did their canvassing and taken into consideration previous purchases. Si PSDBM, ang second tier po natin, we will do market price analysis to ensure that the price set is reasonable or if we can find lower price. And then we do the direct negotiation as the third tier. In here, we try to get terms favorable, more favorable to the government. Like, baka pwede pababaan or usually kasi at the time they were asking for immediate cash payment. We say that we cannot do that. So you have to bear with the government. Price quotations ng PPE na pinadala sa PSDBM noon. So ito mga yung mga pinadala, 1,975, 90 set, 1,910, 90 set, meron ding 2,873, 80 set. We did not procure that. We cannot go above the budget of DOH, which is 2,000 pesos. So we have a slide here on the statement of our good chairman, COA chairman, Michael Aguinaldo, on September 7 during the Senate hearing. So Bayanihan Act po kasi, yung Bayanihan 1, the President was empowered to actually do away with RA 9184. The only requirement was yung advantageous to the government, yung pag-procure. Kailangan bang...
Sir, stop muna, sir. Sir Warren. Before
Yes,
we
Mr.
continue, I'd like the COA... Can you put the previous slide, itong COA? COA Chairman Michael Aguinaldo, are you present, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Do you confirm the slide in front of you that did you say that this quote, September 7 quote?
Yes po, Mr. Chairman, that I think it's a faithful reproduction of the statement I made.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir. Please proceed, Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So there was a question raised kung kailangan bang mag-submit ng PSDBM ng dokumentong nagpapakita ng financial capacity, SEC, GIS, General Information Sheet, at malinis na record ng directors at incorporators sa isang emergency procurement. Hindi po. Even under negotiated procurement in emergency cases po, the only documents asked are the mayor's permit, ITR, omnibus warrant statement, and then compliance to technical specifications. And I must add po, even in regular competitive bidding, which can take as long as 136 days, the general information sheet is not required po. Tapos, yun pong pupuntahan po ang official address ng mga corporation, wala rin po yun kahit po sa ating regular competitive bidding requirements under Republic Act 9184. Issue number 3, naprotektahan ba ng PSDBM ang interes ng gobyerno at ng bayan sa pagbili ng face mask at PPE? Opo, dahil nagbayad lang po tayo sa suppliers, pagkatapos po ma-deliver, ma-inspect at ma-accept ang mga items. So actually, this is what then Yusek Lloyd now was saying. This is the pinaka-safeguard po natin. Under emergency cases po kasi, the factor is you have to address the emergency. Procure immediately and then so that we can address po yung pangangailangan, emergency. If they cannot deliver, then we do not pay. So that's how we protect the government's money po. So surgical mask suppliers. So dito po pinapakita po yung various po natin na suppliers at kung magkano po nabili at pinapakita po na delivered po talaga sila. Wala pong ghost purchases. So as you can see, iba-iba po yung presyo noong simula po ng pandemya. May nabili po tayong mura, may nabili po tayong mahal. Depende po yan sa supplier. But we cannot afford not to buy because we are trying to save lives. So we cannot say that just because it's nearer to 28 pesos, we will not procure that and just let you get exposed to the virus. Hindi po pwede yon. Ang atin pong ginagawa is to address the emergency and save lives. So as you can see, EMS, it began delivering in June 1, 2020 po. Yan po yung ating 1350. Complete deliveries po. This is still EMS. Ito po yung mga deliveries niya, quantity and date delivered. So, this is again a online article. First batch of complete PPE sets from China arrives April 1, 2020. PH carriers add wings to PPE deliveries to get 170 sets, China. So tinap natin kahit ang Philippine Airlines and Cebu Pacific, OCD distributes additional DOH procured PPEs to hospitals. So this data came from, I think, the OCD. It shows how the PPEs were distributed. I think they can better answer these questions. Total distributed PPEs as of August 25, 2020, source OCD. So as you can see on the right side of the screen, those are the quantities distributed to the different regions. Yun lang po, Mr. Chairman. I hope I met the time constraint. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present it.
Thank you. Thank you, all those who gave their opening statements. We will now proceed with interpellations from members. We will recognize interpellators on a first to register basis. I'm now giving you a list for the knowledge of everyone. There is 15 congressmen who have listed. The first one is Vice Chair Johnny Pimentel. Second is Deputy Speaker Marcoleta. Third is Chairman Pido Garbin. Fourth one is Senior Vice Chair Boying Remulla. Fifth is Representative Ron Salo. Sixth is Representative Villacosta Jr. Seven is David J.J. Suarez. 8 is Representative Presley De Jesus. 9 is Congressman Caloy Zarate. 10th is Representative Arlene Rosas. 11th is Representative Ferdy Gaide. Number 12 is Honorable Franz Castro. 13 is Honorable Sara Jane Lago. 14 is Deputy Speaker Prospero Pichay. And the last but not the least is Congressman Fidel Nograles. Let me recognize the additional members present. Representative Senior Deputy Minority Leader Janet Garin, Representative Joe Jimenez, Representative Fidel Nograles, who is here, and Representative Arlene Brosas. So we will recognize you on a first to register basis. You have 20 minutes to ask your questions, and the answers, including comments and manifestations made, will be counted to that allotted time. May I appeal to the better sense of our members and guests to observe proper decorum and always address the chairman in raising the question and giving the answer. Before we recognize the first interpellator, may I ask our resource persons to please stand and be placed under oath pursuant to our rules that witnesses shall testify under oath. May I direct the committee secretary to administer the oath? Comsec.
May I ask the resource person joining us via Zoom to please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before these congressional inquiries to help you God?
I do.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Before we start, I'd like to ask a few questions to Warren Leong, attorney. Are you there?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Can you explain in simple terms kung ano-ano ang proseso sa procurement in a normal setting? Meaning not emergency or emergency case like last year. Can you explain the normal processing procedure?
In a normal
Purchasing
setting,
pala, purchasing procedure.
okay. In a normal procurement, Mr. Chairman, it usually takes around 26 to 136 days po. Meron po tayong pre-bid conference, meron po tayong advertisement, meron po tayong pre-procurement conference, and then it goes yung submission of bids, evaluation, and then post-qualification before we do the award, signing of contract, and then the notice to proceed. So that one takes around 26 to 136 days po. Yung post-qualification po, pwede po yung tumagal, depende kung ma-disqualify po yung ating lowest calculated bidder. So depende po sa rami ng sumali, ganun po katagal yung magiging pag-award ng nanalo. We're talking about pwede pa pong mag-protest dyan. So in case of emergency po talaga, Mr. Chairman, the fastest way to do it under Republic Act 9184 is to use Section 53, yung negotiated procurement under emergency cases. This one, Mr. Chairman, the procuring entities can do this within 6 to 10 days. So direct negotiation po ito, wala po tayong advertisement. So you can directly negotiate, then you evaluate the products or the items that's being offered to you, and then you give the notice of award. Ang primary concern under emergency cases negotiated procurement is the timeliness nung address natin sa emergency situation. But this was not fast enough for the COVID-19 pandemic. We were already going 6 to 10 days, and yet we couldn't procure the needed items. Why? Because the private sector could pay cash immediately if they needed it. In fact, they could even pay a premium. So at disadvantage po ang government. And hindi lang po ang pribadong sektor yung ating kompetensya doon, even foreign countries were procuring much needed supplies. Even in one of the articles that we presented sa PowerPoint, I think meron pa yung nagka-diplomatic issue, ang France yata at US nagkaagawan ng surgical mask based on the article at least. So the legislative department gave us Bayanihan 1, so exempting the procurement from everything that is Republic Act 9184. That's very clear from the simple words used in Bayanihan 1. It said,
Okay, sir.
Thank you.
Yung tanong ko lang, what do you mean?
Itong si Jeng X alatang abnormal ito eh. Alam mo bakit? Paano masasabing walang, alam mo ang COA nagbibis lang yan sa resibo. Ngayon kung akong gago o mangdaraya ako, kawatan ako, bago ako magnakaw, planchado na yan. Bibigyan kita ng resibo, i-audit mo. O sige, abnormal itong si Jeng hindi nag-iisip eh. Alam mo, kitang-kita sa Pagdinig, tingnan mo yung mga Chinese diyan, ang pinaboran Bisaya, ay puro mga Chinese, nakita mo, walang pundo. Oh, yung style pa nila kung nakinig ka sa parang Bombay. Saan ka ba nakakita na pinaboran mo silang nanalo sa award, kumbaga sinasabi nila ang pera 600,000, tapos binigyan mo ng bilyon-bilyong halaga, tapos ang mga palusot nila, wala pala silang produkto. Ang ginagawa nila, pag bibili yung gobyerno sa kanila, sasabihin nila sa mga kakilala pa nilang Chinese, oh, ibigay mo sa akin yung mga PPE mo, mga mask mo, isusupply ko sa gobyerno. So makita mo dyan, ikaw Jenk, di ka nag-iisip, sana nakikinig ka kahit doon sa Senado. Tingnan mo kasing sitwasyon sa bansa natin, tingnan mo. Ang COA report, nagbabase lang yan kung anong susumiti sa kanila na audit. Hindi yan nag-iimbestiga. Halimbawa ako, nagkukonsabahan kami ng supplier o bigyan mo ko ng 1,000,000 piso. Tapos gawin natin yung 100 pataasan natin yung presyo niyan. Pero sa totoong presyo yan 500,000. Nagkukonsabuhan kayo. O paano ma-detect ng ano yan? Paano ma-detect ng COA yung kung ganung sistema? Alam ba ng COA yan? Hindi eh. Dapat makita mo yung investigasyon. Hindi yung sinabi ng COA na walang anomalya, yun na yun. Hindi yung ganun, Jeng. Nag-iisip ka sana. Nakakainis ka eh. Hindi ka nag-iisip eh. Pinaburan mo talaga yung, tingnan mo kasi yung sitwasyon. Paghambingin mo. Hindi yung puro ka na lang ako. Tinitingnan ko dito, talagang may mali dito. Doon pa lang sa mga Chinese na pinaburan nila, doon pa lang halatado na eh. Bakit puro Chinese? At saka wala namang kakayanan. Nung in-interview, wala naman silang produkto. Kung kani-kanino sila kumukuha. Ano ba yun? Doon pa lang, alam mo na dapat eh. Kaso lang bulag ka eh. Tuloy ko na ito mga kabanat. Nakakainis lang eh kung ano nang pinagsasabi. Hindi nag-iisip.
Everything. Exempted from everything. What do you mean? Everything? So wala na. Waive na ang 9184. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman, because the word used is as exemption from 9184 and other relevant laws.
Okay. I would like to get the cat out of the bag, no? Dalawa kasi issue dito. Una, overpriced daw. Something like 13 pesos, tapos kayo daw 28 pesos. So, narinig ko rin dito sa PowerPoint mo, is yung 28 pesos is yung price ng government ang sinunod nyo. Anong basis nyo doon sa 28 pesos?
Well, actually, Mr. Chairman, we are comparing different timelines. So the 28 pesos was during the start of the pandemic in April 2020. The 13.50 we got when it was delivered in June 1, 2020. So there was actually a gap of about 2 months po. And precisely, we procured po yung 13.50 to stabilize yung supply po natin sa surgical mask. Ang 28 pesos po naman, yan po ang price freeze ni DOH.
DOH, Secretary Duque, do you confirm the price freeze? The first order that you issued 2020, 28 pesos, is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honor. That is on the recommendation of the DTI. So the price ceiling of 28 was a joint determination of the DTI and the DOH. Tama po kayo, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Attorney Warren, magkano yung pinurchase yung mask from Farmally?
From Farmally, I think we purchased 27.72.
So,
And then
so ibig sabihin, you confirmed with the guidelines of government na 28 pesos mas 27 kayo. Is that right?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, number 2. Bukod sa issue ng price na yan, kasi price is relative, dependent on the demand and supply. Demand and supply is always moving. It is not stationary, it is not fixed. It is dependent on the situation.
O dito, sagutin ko lang. Yung tinatopic doon sa Senado, konti lang, interrupt ko lang Yung topic sa Senado, yung tinatawag nila na price freeze, yan lang yun sa mga litere na nagtitinda dito sa ating bansa. Pero yung pag-order sa mga kampanya, hindi yan naka-price freeze. Dapat nilinaw din itong mga kongreso eh. Yung price freeze, o sinasabi nila SRP, yun lang yung sa bansa natin. Halimbawa, tayo bibili. Yan, naka-freeze yan, hindi pwede sila magtaas. Pero yung mga seller, yun lang yun. Pero yung mga bumili sila sa ibang bansa, nilinaw yan sa kongreso eh. Kulang, sa Senado eh, nung nagkaroon ng pagdinig. Talagang kulang dito sa Senado pag nakita mo yung mga tanong. Talagang mahina. Sa kongreso pala, sorry.
Supply and on the demand. It is moving every day, di ba? Tama po ba yon?
Correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, yung mga sinasabi ng mga kasama natin sa Senado na meron ng 7 pesos, 6 pesos, kailan po kaya itong presyo na to?
Actually, PSDBM, when I was no longer there, I think around November,
Wow.
December, we're able to procure.
Wow, talaga? Kung maghahinti ako, hindi na ako kailangan ng kapital. So, pwede pala ako maghahinti, wala akong pera. Pwede pala yon. Kung papasok ako sa gobyerno. Oh. Kahit wala akong kapital na malaki, billion kukunin ko, pwede pala yon. Oh, ano sa palagay mo, Jeng, ang nangyayari dyan? Pera ko, 100 peso. Papasokin ko yung billion, 1 milyon. Pwede ba yon? Pwede ba akong payagan ng gobyerno kaya sa tingin mo? Kung walang pabor dyan na nangyayari? Walang paboran dyan? Nag-iisip ka ba? Mga palusot mo, hindi yan obra yan kung sa talagang realidad. Kaso lang, wala eh.
Peso something, 2 peso something. So
Kalukuhan
this
yan.
was in the later part of the year
Pera
po.
ng kabulok.
By
So
this time,
fourth quarter 2020, nakapicure kayo ng 1 peso? Tama?
I think 1.70. There's PSDBM is here. I think they can help us
Okay.
with that.
PSDBM, do you confirm that there was a purchase fourth quarter 2020 at 1 peso 70?
Yes,
Around
Mr.
that-
Chairman.
Okay. So iba-iba yung price dependent sa demand and supply. Tama po ba yon, Sir Warren?
Correct po, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. What is your position before at DBMPS?
I was the director for procurement, Mr. Chairman.
How many months from what date to what date? Inclusive date, sir.
I was there, I think, from February 3 to December 9 or 10, 2020.
What was your participation on this transaction in Farmali? Can you describe to this committee?
I was there as the director for procurement, so I review the documents before it goes to the Hope, Your Honor, which is Yusek Lloyd Lau. So recommendatory signature po ako.
So sino mas mataas po? Si Yusek Lao o kayo po, Sir Warren?
Yusek Lloyd Lau, because he was then the OIC Executive Director for PSDBM.
So you're the director below him, the director for procurement. Tama po ba?
There were 3 directors po. I was the director for procurement.
Thank you. Second issue, before I give it to the first interpellator, kasi ako direct to the point para malaman ng tao. May mga haka-haka po na may malaking tao na nag-impluwensya sa decision making ninyo. So close po ba kayo kay Senator Bongo?
Hindi po, Mr. Chairman. In fact, I was never under him.
Magkakilala
So,
po ba kayo? Na before the government, before this 2016.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes.
I serve as consultant then Vice Mayor Rodrigo Duterte. So, Senator Bongo was then, I don't know what his official designation was, but I was a consultant. So I knew him as far as back that time.
So since nandiyan kayo sa PSDBM, meron ba malalaking tao from the palace na nag-influence sa inyo na to select Farmali sa mga mass? Meron po ba?
Wala po, Mr. Chairman.
Meron ba nag-utos sa DBM i-award ang contract na ito sa Farmali?
Wala po, Mr. Chairman.
Si Senator Bongo ba ang nag-utos nito na i-award sa Farmali?
Hindi po, Mr. Chairman.
Ito mga kababayan, mga kabanat, sagutin ko lang ito. Parang ito yung tanong ni Aglipay, yung tanong ng hindi nag-iisip mga kabanat. In short, may magnanakaw bang nag-aamin pag tinanong mong siya ay nagnakaw? Parang ganun eh. Alangan magsasabi niyang oo, kundi wala. Diba? Parang
So
gulo
dito po ay in-address ko na yung sa dalawang issue na important sa akin bilang chairman. So thank you po. Let us begin with the period of interpellation. For your 20 minutes, the first to register was Sir Vice Chair Johnny Pimentel. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, I have several questions to the different resource persons because there are so many issues that needs to be clarified. I hope I will be able to finish. Anyway, unahin ko na po ang COA. Good morning, Chairman Aguinaldo.
Good morning, sir.
Chairman, every time that a government agency purchases services or goods using government funds, it must conform to the provisions of Republic Act 9184, the Procurement Act. Hindi po pwedeng bumili ang ahensya kahit national agency, provincial government, municipal government, or barangay unit kung hindi susundin ang batas ng 9184. Kahit ballpen, kahit coupon bond, kailangan po it will conform to the provisions of RA 9184. Is that correct, Chairman?
Mr. Chairman, as a general rule, tama po yun. Dapat may compliance with 9184.
Okay, Chairman Aguinaldo, what are the main provisions of RA 9184? Simplified lang po. Hindi po ba when an agency purchases services or goods, it must pass through a competitive bidding where there are at least 3 bidders and the lowest bid will be the one to be awarded. Hindi po ba?
Tama po, sa general rule, dapat may bidding. Yan ang default rule po. Dapat magkaroon ng bidding. Competitive bidding. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
In the case, Mr. Chair, of the purchases of supplies funded under Bayanihan Act 1, must it also conform to the provisions of RA 9184?
Mr. Chairman, there is a provision that was cited by the Deputy Ombudsman Leong earlier that said that the President can do the procurement without regard or as an exemption to the provisions of RA 9184 and I think related laws. Ang sinasabi lang is of course yung most advantageous to government yung i-procure. But that said, there's a GPPB resolution number 1-2020 which was issued on April 6, 2020. And ang subject po nito are guidelines for emergency procurement under Republic Act 11469 or the Bayanihan to Heal as One Act or yung Bayanihan 1 po. So despite the fact that the President would have authorized the procurement without regard to 9184, this issuance shows that the DBM actually decided na hindi, we will still apply the rules on emergency procurement subject to the contents of the circular. So yun po yung sinusunod. Kaya nung sinabi ni Deputy Ombudsman kanina na ano yung mga documents that were shown, yung omnibus sworn statement, yung technical evaluation and all, that's actually found dito sa circular po na to.
So, Chairman, bale, yung pagbili po ng mga face mask dun sa Bayanihan 1 Act, hindi na po sinunod yung provisions ng RA 9184. Ang ginawa ho natin, hindi competitive bidding, but rather emergency procurement. Because accordingly, on Section 4K of the Bayanihan 1 Act, is that funds for this purpose, when used, are exempted for the provisions of 1981-84. Tama po ba yun?
Yes po. But like I said, nonetheless, nag-apply rin sila ng provisions on emergency procurement ng 9184. Despite the fact na under Bayanihan 1, they could have actually ignored 9184 altogether. Pero
So,
siguro
in
to the
short,
credit...
yes, in short, Mr. Chairman, based on the provisions that was stated in Bayanihan 1 Act, they can proceed with the emergency procurement and it is still legal. Ganun po ba?
Yes, that would be correct, Mr. Chairman.
Now, under emergency procurement, Chairman Aguinaldo, kailangan po ba na may 3 bidders or 3 quotations?
Dun sa, based on the GPPB circular, yung normal process is meron rin parang canvassing, no? Pero Dito sa GPPB circular, wala na doon actually yung requirement of having 3 bidders. Ang nangyayari lang dyan is yung to find the most advantageous price available in the market at saka yung factor of being able to deliver on those the items being procured. So medyo nawawala na po yung requirement na yon. Although I noted dun sa presentation ni Deputy Ombudsman, he presented 3 documents that would seem to show that they asked quotations from 3 different suppliers.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Aguinaldo. So let me just clarify again. So bali po, because of the provision that exempted sa 9184 and they went to the emergency procurement, hindi na po kailangan ng 3 bidders. They can just negotiate with 1 supplier. Yun po.
Pwede po, under the circular, they were just required to do preliminary market scanning showing prevailing market prices and practice. But they were not specifically required to actually canvass from at least 3 possible suppliers.
Okay, that is already clarified. That exempted yung purchases under Bayanihan 1 Act and there is no need for 3 bidders or 3 quotations. Thank you po. May lastly, Chairman, in September 7, you were invited to the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee and you issued a statement which was shown by Attorney Leong. Ano po ang ibig sabihin niyo nito?
Mr. Chairman, this is exactly, I think, the point you've been making na yun nga, under the law, Bayanihan 1, the President was authorized to procure expeditiously, I think that's the word that was used, as an exemption from 9184 and related laws. No? But nonetheless, the DBM and I'm guessing the Office of the President as well agreed to apply the rules on emergency procurement with perhaps a little modifications, which is reflected in GPPB Circular number 01-2020. Kaya ang sinasabi ko po is while they could have done away with that because siguro pandemic tayo at in Congress saw fit na the President should have that authority to procure it as expeditiously as possible, there seems to have been an effort naman to at least put some order in the procurement process by applying emergency procurement rules as reflected in the GPPB issuance of April 6, 2020.
So in short, Mr. Chairman Aguinaldo, all the processes in the purchase of the face mask were legal considering all these provisions under Bayanihan 1 Act.
Well, as long as it was compliant with GPPB Circular 1-2020, then it would be considered compliant with the requirements of law.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Aguinaldo.
Mr.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I had requested from the chairperson of the committee if I could be excused for from 12 o'clock up to 2 o'clock because I have a previously scheduled event. So I would ask permission to leave lang po.
Yes, sir. Make sure lang to go back after 2 o'clock if you have. We would appreciate it po.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Maraming
Thank you, sir.
salamat po.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to, Mr. Chair, address the next question to Attorney Warren Leong.
Yes, Attorney Warren, please respond to the questions of Vice Chair.
Attorney Warren Leong, Chairman Aguinaldo earlier mentioned that under the emergency procurement, there was no need to ask quotations or do a market study or survey of the prices kasi emergency procurement nga. Ang tanong ko, did you get any quotation from other suppliers regarding the face mask and the PPE?
That is mixed, Your Honor, because we're allowed to use historical data and we're also allowed to ask for quotations. So that is what I was saying, Mr. Chairman. We went over and above the requirements of the law.
So in short, in spite that there was no need to get a quotation from 3 bidders dahil emergency procurement nga, you still got quotations from other bidders?
Yes, Your Honor, or used historical data that was very close to the actual procurement po. That
No,
is
why did
also
you do it? Why did you just not go into emergency procurement? Allowed naman pala doon sa Bayanihan 1 Act. Why did you have to get 3 bidders pa? For what reason?
because we wanted to show, Your Honor, that despite the fact that we're doing Bayanihan 1 procurement, we were very, how do I say it, cautious with the money of the government, and we wanted to show COA that we went out and procured the most advantageous contract given that situation.
So what was the result of the market scan?
Always, Your Honor, in all our procurement, we procured the lowest, Your Honor, in our market scanning po.
No, can you give me some figures? Can you give me some figures? Ano, kumuha kayo ng 3 quotation. So anong nangyari? Can you give me the 3 figures? Ilan bang kinuna ninyo ng quotation? 3?
Yes, Your Honor. I think for that Pharmally procurement, we had Philippine Blue Cross po, around 28 pesos. Mac Tycoon, I think we had it around, during March 25, around 28 pesos din po. And then the price freeze was set by DOH in March 2020 until August was also at 28 pesos. Plus, Your Honor, we took into consideration that the face mask offered by the supplier was readily available po. Yun po yung pinaka-importante in an emergency procurement.
So what was the quote of Pharmally? Because you mentioned 3 suppliers na nag-quote ng 28 pesos. Magkano ang quote ng Pharmally?
Quote of Pharmally, if my memory serves me right, is around 27.72, and they wanted cash payment immediately po. So we had to negotiate na hindi po
So
pwede yan sa gobyerno.
compared to the 3 other quotations, mas mababa talaga ang Pharmally.
Mas mababa at available po ang face mask. Yun po ang pinaka-importante rin po.
And that was the reason why you decided to award it to Pharmally, considering that you compared it to other quotations. Hindi po ba?
Correct,
That's correct. Okay.
Mr. Chairman. That is correct.
Okay, Mr. Chair, what was the volume of face masks required at that time that must be purchased in April 2020?
Mr. Chairman, we were trying to procure as many as possible. So from Pharmally, during that procurement, we were able to procure 500,000 face masks.
Can you give me a ballpark figure? Ilan ang kailangan at that time?
Your Honor, we eventually bought 100 million pieces of face masks from EMS. So we bought as much as possible to stabilize the supply in the Philippines. So we were going towards that, Your Honor.
And also, when did you need the face mask to be delivered? It was immediate, hindi po ba? Or did you have to wait for 2 months? Or what was the timetable that you required the suppliers to deliver?
This is emergency procurement, Your Honor. We're actually allowed to directly negotiate, as explained by the Honorable COA Chairman. We were actually looking for immediate suppliers who could immediately supply because walang-wala na po, Mr. Chairman, tayong face mask at that time. So it turned out that Pharmally had around 500,000, and then we bought as many supplies na readily available or can be delivered within a reasonable period of time. Then we decided na dapat meron na dito sa Pilipinas talaga. So we entered into a contract with EMS and gave EMS, if I'm not mistaken, a 2-month lead time to set up its factory and produce po face masks so that we can stabilize the prices inside the country.
So it has been established that Farmally at that time had already a ready supply for the 500,000 masks.
That is correct, Your Honor.
Okay, let us go to other questions, no? There were allegations that came up during the past weeks that there were ghost deliveries made by Farmally. Is this true?
No, Mr. Chairman. In fact, their face masks were readily available. That is why in my presentation, I showed the deliveries of the other suppliers as well when they were delivered to show na lahat po ng binili po natin were delivered po. And I think DOH or the OCD or IATF can attest to that because they were the one distributing the other items po.
So lahat nung dineliver ng Farmally, it was properly inspected by your employees.
I am not the one in charge of that, but I can answer yes po.
But I'm
Because
sure that there was certificate of inspection to make sure that these were delivered. Meron po kayo niyan.
That is correct because our system is made pursuant to RA 9184. So ayaw po niya pumayag na magbayad kami nang wala pong ICAR yung tinatawag namin, Inspection Certificate and Acceptance Report.
Did you make an advance payment to Farmally?
I don't remember making any advance payment to Farmally, Your Honor.
So before
None.
payment was made to Farmally, na-deliver muna. Hindi kayo nagbigay ng advance payment. Can you clarify that?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Your
Okay.
The face, Your Honor. I can.
Attorney Warren, 42 billion pesos were transferred to your procurement service. Hindi po ba?
Around that amount, Your Honor.
Out of 42 billion pesos, magkano po ang na-award doon sa Farmally?
Let me check my records, Your Honor.
Lahat ba ng 42 billion in-award sa Farmally or a portion of this?
No, Your Honor. Around 8.8 billion were awarded in 2020 and another 2.9 billion were awarded in 2021.
So what happened to the remaining balance of almost 30 billion pesos? May mga ibang suppliers din na naka-avail nun.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
So how many suppliers do you think, do you have any record? How many suppliers were able to avail or supply this face mask or equipment under the 42 billion transfer of fund?
I think PSDBM is ready with that figure, Your Honor, or maybe Yusek Lloyd Lau can answer that as the previous executive director.
Well, maybe you can furnish us a copy so that we just want to establish whether the 42 billion pesos was cornered by Farmally or there were other suppliers that supplied the 42 billion pesos. Kasi lumalabas po sa mga alegasyon, kinorner daw ng Farmally itong 42 billion. But it seems that now, upon your statements, that hindi naman lahat ng 42 billion napunta kay Farmally.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, Lloyd.
Yes, Yusek Lau, please,
Mr. Chairman, Lloyd Lau. I think it has prepared a PowerPoint on this for visual appreciation by Congress. May we be allowed to share? I think PSDBM can.
That will take time and
just answer the direct questions of
direct questions lang at Yusek Lau. Tinanong ko lang po, out of 42 billion pesos, marami ding suppliers pala ang naka-avail nitong 42 billion pesos. It's not only Farmally.
I'll answer it, sir, straight. As far as PPE sets, 33% of the PPE sets was awarded to Sunwest Construction and Development Corporation. 20% of the PPE sets were awarded to Pharmaleaf Pharmaceutical Corporation. 11% was awarded to Hafid and Erasmus. The rest of the items were awarded to Shuzu, Bowman, Nika Trading, Chunsen, Element Trade, Avila Medical and Hospital Supplies, Biomedpro, Pharmaceuticals, Metro Mobilia Corporation, Wenwa Development Corporation, Pacific Distributors Group, Pacific Field, Unimasters Conglomerate Incorporated, Warmurus Trading, MKG Tolentino Trading. Now, when we go to statistical data, Pharmally was only able to supply 20% of the total quantity of the required PPE sets demanded by the Philippine government. When we go to surgical face masks, Hafid and Erasmus had the highest supply of all the unit quantity. They supplied 141 million pieces of face mask, which is equivalent to 44% of the total are procured by PSDBM. EMS Components was able to supply 100 million pieces, which is equivalent to 31.63% of the total procured items, now face masks. Unet Distributors Corporation was able to supply 60 million pieces, which is equivalent to 19.19% of the total face mask procured. Pharmally was only able to supply 12,900,000, which is 4.08% of the total procured face mask. The rest po, ang nag-supply po sa Health, Wellness, Lifestyle, Cosmic Technologies, PhilPharma Wealth, and New Life Pharmaceuticals. Now, based on statistics, Pharmally was able to supply 4.1% only of the total quantity required by PSDBM. If you look into the further details of PSDBM procurement, as we continued procuring, thank you to the help of EMS, na-stabilize po natin ang price from April 27 to June kasi after procuring items from Pharmally, nakabili tayo kay EMS on April, but they started delivering on June 1. Nag-stabilize po tayo at 1350. It stabilized until October. In fact, until November and December, nagkaroon tayo ng stock, which allowed us to conduct a bidding already with the sufficient supply. Nagbidding tayo, doon tayo nag-award ng as low as 1.48 pesos kay Hafid and Erasmus. Nag-award din tayo ng 1.97 pesos kay UDC Joint Venture, and bigay din tayo kay UDC Medtex Joint Venture at 2 pesos and 26 cents. Because of this process of PSDBM, we were able to save money, we were able to supply sufficiently the demands of the Philippine government, and we were able to stabilize the price and got it as cheap as possible as time went by. And nakikita po natin ang transition dito as the local market strengthens its capability, we were able to give more award to them. So that's how PSDBM worked its job.
Thank you for the clarification, Yusek Lau. My last question to you is that although this was asked before earlier by Chairman, did any high government official ever call you to tell you to favor Pharmally for the
No.
supplies of the face mask?
Nobody po. The only instruction to us was make sure there will be ample supply. The doctors, medical professionals, and the frontliners are dying. We have to address the situation. And that's what we did our job.
Thank you, Yusek Lau. Can I still question one resource person? May I know if the principal of EMS is present? Yes, certain Mr. Ferrer.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning or good afternoon, Your Honor, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Ferrer, you were one of the suppliers for the face masks, hindi po ba?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Did you make a proposal to the procurement services to supply masks?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
How many masks were you supposed to deliver to DBM PS?
Mr. Chairman, we were awarded a contract of 100 million pieces face mask, in which we did deliver the 100 million pieces.
What was the date of the purchase order for the 100 million masks?
The purchase order, just give me 2 seconds. The notice of award and contract agreement was given April 27, 2020.
April 27. So did it state in the purchase order? Kasi usually yan, may nakalagay dyan, how many days you have to deliver. Otherwise, after the lapse of that calendar days, you must pay liquidated damages. Ano po ba ang nakalagay dun sa purchase order? April 27, ilan days ang binigay sa inyo para ma-deliver ho ninyo yon?
Mr. Chairman, the contract stated multiple delivery dates, which started the first tranche started May 25 until June 25 for 2.1 million pieces. So our contract with PSDBM is on a monthly delivery basis, Mr. Chairman.
Was it stated, Mr. Chair, in your contract?
That's correct, sir. It was stated in our contract the different tranches or the different delivery commitments, monthly commitments.
So how long did it take you, Mr. Chair, for you to deliver the 100 million masks?
We started delivery, as mentioned earlier, on June 1st, and our last delivery was this July 2021.
So medyo matagal na po yun, Mr. Chair. It took you almost 1 year to deliver 100 million masks.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. There was some changes in the delivery schedule along within that calendar year, within that fiscal year, Mr. Chairman.
Is it true, Mr. Ferrer, that you wrote a letter to Yusik Lau that you requested for an extension of the delivery, that instead of April, you will deliver by June?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman. But instead of our first delivery on May 25th, we requested if we could deliver 1 week after on June 1st.
So, hindi talaga kayo pwede mag-deliver nung April. You cannot deliver at that time on April, considering that the purchase order was made on April 27.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman. We had to get our FDA certifications, license to operate, as well as set up our equipment, our factory and our machines. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I still have to question 3 more resource persons. Do you think I could be given a chance to 3 resource persons na lang to, Mr. Chair, sa DTI, Secretary Duque and General Galvez? Can I ask for an extension, Mr. Chair?
5 minutes.
Okay, sa DTI na lang. Do I have any representative sa DTI? Do we have General Galvez already? General Galvez, are you online? General Galvez.
Sir, I'm already online. I just came from the budget hearing.
Okay, thank you. I'll go direct to the questions. Mr. Chair, is it true that last year, General Galvez, C-130s were used to transport supplies in goods from China?
Yes, Your Honor. We use C-130 flights and also Philippine Airlines and also the Cebu Pacific flights.
Why did you have to use the C-130s? Hindi ba kasama na yon sa delivery ng mga suppliers?
Sir, actually, sir, so during those times, naka-lockdown po tayo. Talaga pong wala pong aircraft na pwede tayo magamit para sa pag-transport ng ano po ng ating mga PPEs. And at the same time, ang ano po, ang sabi nga po ng supplier, pagka nakapag-consolidate po tayo, kailangan pong makuha kagad kasi agawan po noon ng PPEs. In fact, mayroon pong instances na talagang nasa airport na yung supply po na divert po sa ibang country.
No, pero doon po sa purchase orders, hindi po nakasaad doon na they will deliver the supplies to the Philippines?
Sa mga kontrata po, Your Honors, meron po tayong tinatawag na CIF or non-CIF. Pagka sabi pong CIF, meaning yung customs, yung insurance at saka yung freight, ay nasa kontrata po na magbabayad po yung supplier. In this case, considering that supplier cannot have that capacity to mobilize yung kanilang mga possible cargoes, considering that naka-lockdown po tayo noon, lahat po naka-lockdown, including China is on lockdown. Ang talaga po natin only recourse is to use yung military planes po natin at saka po yung ating mga carriers.
In the case of Farmally, gumamit po ba sila ng C-130 to deliver the supplies?
No sir, ang ginamit lang po natin ang ating C-130 at saka yung ating mga asset, yung barko. Yung sa initial po na 900,000 na contract, I believe it is a Chinese company na direct po sa China. Yung po na po natin. At ang Farmally po, ang ginamit po ng Farmally, CIA po sila. Sila po ang nag-deliver po.
So very clear that Farmally did not use any C-130, dineliver po nila sa Pilipinas yung supplies sila unlike other suppliers.
Yes, Your Honor. Actually po, napakaganda po sa atin yun. Mas advantageous at saka mas maganda. Dahil kasi yung mga unang panahon na dalawa pong contractor na ginamit yung C-130, napakalaki ng risk ng ng C-130 po natin at saka yung nasa atin po ang risk ng deployment at saka ng freight. Pero ito po, maganda po ang ginawa ng Farmally dahil kasi mas very advantageous kasi sila po ang nagdadala po sa ating mga ports. Your Honor, for the information of the public, ang Farmally po ang nagdala ng mga supplies dito po sa Manila at doon po sa Cagayan de Oro, sa Davao at saka sa Cebu po. So ibig sabihin talagang isinusubo na po sa atin. Tawag po namin sa military doon, throughput po ang kanilang ginawa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will reserve a slot for the next round.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Vice Chair. Next to interpolate is DS Dante Marcoleta. Yes, Marcoleta, you have the floor.
Maraming salamat po, Mr. Chair. Pwede po bang balikan natin si Deputy Ombudsman Leong? May ilang katanungan lamang po sa kanya.
I'm here, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please answer the questions of DS Marcoleta, sir.
Good morning, Deputy Ombudsman Leong.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Malinaw naman po ang inyong mga ibinibigay na paliwanag. Sa amin po, nasusubaybayan namin at medyo magaan naman pong intindihin ang mga pinapaliwanag ninyo ngayon. Meron lang po akong pandagdag para mas lalo po nating maunawaan. Doon po sa mga ginamit yung emergency procurement process, kahit na hindi na kailangan yung Bayanihan 1 na kung saan ini-exempt naman po talaga yung 9184 at iba pang mga related laws. Pero dahil gusto ninyong masinop siguro ang kaban ng bayan, gumamit kayo ng tinatawag na diligence as a father, good diligence, diligence of a good father of the family. Tama po ba yung pagkakaintindi namin, Deputy Ombudsman?
Yes, Your Honor. We wanted to show that we were doing diligence over and above the requirement of the law. That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
So, sa paggamit po ninyo ng emergency procurement process, kailangan bang ma-inspection po ninyo yung lugar ng supplier na inyong binigyan ng kontrato o kaya kailangan ba niyong matingnan ng kanilang mga bodega kung yun, mga yun ay may laman?
That is not a requirement in all modes of procurement, Your Honor, even in competitive bidding, emergency procurement, and most especially in Bayanihan 1, Your Honor.
Ang PSDBM po ba ay pinapayagan na mag-award ng isang malaking kontrata katulad halimbawa ng 8-point-something billion pesos sa Parmalee Pharmaceuticals Corporation?
First of all, Your Honor, I would like to clarify that the 8.5 billion is composed of several contracts. Now, if I get your question clearly, the question is, is there a limitation to what a procuring entity can award to a particular supplier? The answer is there's no limitation, Your Honor. We can award as much as possible, as much as he wins or the corporation wins.
Kasi po yung nababalitaan namin at nakikita rin namin sa pagdinig sa ibang chamber, parang nagdududa sila sapagkat bumili kayo ng supply sa isang kumpanya na hindi naman ninyo kilala at mababa pa yung kanilang capitalization at wala naman daw record ng talaan sa government procurement. Ito yung nakapagbibigay ng pagdududa sa kanila at kung susumahin yung mga naibigay yung kontrata sa kanila, lalabas nga na aabot ng mahigit 8 bilyon. So ang tanong lamang po namin, meron po bang anomalya kung sakasakaling makapaglaan kayo ng ganito kalaking halaga sa pagkuha ninyo ng mga kakailanganin nating medical supplies sa kasagsagan ng pandemya? Yun po yung tanong.
Wala pong anomalya, Mr. Chairman. And even under Republic Act 9184, negotiated procurement under emergency cases, you can award that much money, Your Honor. In Bayanihan 1,
kahit na yung supplier ay hindi direktang nagbebenta ng medical supplies katulad ng Parmalee, wala rin pong illegal doon, Deputy Ombudsman.
Yes, Your Honor, walang illegal. 2 points po, Your Honor. First po, wala po talaga tayong ganong manufacturers dito sa Pilipinas. Multiple contracts po yung awarded kay Parmalee. Kasama po doon ang testing kits, 2 brand yata ng testing kits, and I think 8-piece or 9-piece PPE set. So wala po tayong manufacturer na kayang gumawa ng lahat ng yan. Second po, hindi naman po pinagbabawal na maging supplier din po sila. So lahat naman po halos kumukuha sa ibang bansa ng supplies po nila.
Yun nga po, kaya nga po nagtatanong sa inyo para ganap nating maliwanagan para mawala po ang bahid ng pagdududa na nakatuon po sa inyo ngayon sapagkat mga Chinese personalities daw po ang nasa likod nito. Isang tanong na lang po. Meron po ba kayong napaboran na kumpanya rito? Halimbawa, napaboran ba ninyo nang hindi nyo inaasahan ang mga Chinese companies at maaaring naiwanan nang hindi nyo sinasadya yung mga local suppliers natin na meron din naman palang kakayahan nung panahon na kayo'y agarang nag-aangkat? Nangyari po ba ito, Deputy Ombudsman?
Mr. Chairman, wala po tayong pinaboran. Nung simula po ng pandemya, talagang hirap po ang supply dito sa Pilipinas. Kaya po, we had to go to China directly. And kaya po, karamihan naman po din ng face mask, kinukuha din po sa China. So yun po ang nangyari niyan. And as PSDBM will be able to show, marami po tayong nabili kahit po sa ating local suppliers po. Marami po tayong nabili na produkto kahit sa ating local suppliers. And I think DTI will be able to show na hanggang ngayon po, hindi naman po tayo nagmamanufacturer dito sa Pilipinas ng kompletong 10-piece set ng PPE po. Wala po tayong manufacturer po ng kompletong 10-piece set.
Deputy Ombudsman, alam po ninyo, ang talagang pinaka-importante lang para mapawi po lahat ng uri ng pagdududa. Inaasahan po ng aming komite na maisumiti ninyo at alam naman namin kaya ninyo sigurong gawin ito. Ang importante po yung na-supply po ba yung tamang bilang at tamang kalidad ng mga medical supplies na inangkat ninyo dahil na rin sa request ng DOH, at bago po ba ito ma-deliver, ito naman ay na-inspection ninyong mabuti at meron naman kayo siguradong dokumento, ito ay na-inspect na mabuti ayon sa specifications na hinihingi ng DOH, at meron naman taong talagang tumanggap nito para mapatibayan natin na mayroong physical supply talaga at walang ghost delivery. At pagkatapos tinanggap mula sa inyo ng DOH, at ang DOH naman, ito po ay naipamigay sa lahat ng mga tao o mga ospital na kung saan talaga ito ay dapat na ibigay sa bawat isa sa kanila. Meron po tayong mga dokumentong ganito, Deputy Ombudsman, na inyo pong isusumite sa ating komite sapagkat ito naman ay titingnan din namin sa paggagawa ng committee report pagka natapos po ang pagdinig na ito.
Tama po yan, Mr. Chairman. Meron po yung documentation on the inspection and acceptance of the items. At meron po yung documentation pag turnover po sa DOH. PSDBM can provide that, Mr. Chairman.
Mga ilang araw po ang hihingin ninyo para maisumiti po lahat ng ito, lahat ng katibayan na ito po ay na-deliver, tama ang kalidad, tama ang kantidad, in-inspect po mabuti, meron pong nag-receive, at pagkatapos meron tayong katibayan na naipamigay naman natin sa kanyang kinauukulan lahat ng ospital, lahat ng mga frontliners, tauhan na dapat makinabang sa binili po ng PSDBM. Mga ilang araw po ang kakailanganin nyo?
I'm no longer connected with PSDBM since December, Your Honor. I may have to ask PSDBM how much time they need to do that. If I may point out also, Your Honor, the last portion, the distribution to the hospitals, I think it is IATF or OCD doing that. PSDBM, please.
Mr. Chair, good morning. We do have the records on file, the inspection reports, as well as the inspection documents will prove the actual inspection and evaluation items to prove compliance with the technical specifications. We also have the PS delivery receipts as proof that the actual items were delivered to the DOH. Attorney Leong is correct that we don't have any data regarding the actual recipients of these items, since the distribution function belongs to the DOH and the OCD. We will undertake to submit these documents, Mr. Chair, before the next hearing.
Next hearing natin, Mr. Chair.
Monday, September 20 at 11 o'clock.
So will you be able to submit all these documents before Monday next week?
We will comply, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Deputy Leong, isang tanong na lamang po. Nasundan po namin ang inyong pagpapaliwanag at sa amin po ay medyo magaan naman pong intindihin.
No audio, Mr. Chairman.
Wala po ako sa last question.
Hello?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry, I didn't get the...
Ganito po, nasusundan po namin at nasasakyan po ang pagpapaliwanag, kaya po inisa-isa namin para maging malinaw hindi lamang po sa amin, kundi lalong-lalo na po sa ating mga mamamayan na maaaring nakikinig po sa ating pagsisiyasat ngayon. Ang tanong ko na lamang po sa inyo, ito bang uri ng pagpapaliwanag na binibigay nyo sa amin ngayon ay ganito rin ang pagpapaliwanag na binigay po ninyo sa Senate Blue Ribbon Committee?
I haven't had the opportunity to speak yet in the Senate hearing, Mr. Chairman. This is the first time I was given the opportunity to speak. So I believe PSDBM then Yusek Lloyd Lau and Secretary Galvez essentially have the same message that I'm presenting to you.
Ang ibig po ninyong sabihin, Deputy Ombudsman, hindi po kayo binigyan ng pagkakataon na magpaliwanag kagaya po ng ginagawa namin ngayong umaga?
I have not yet been called in the Senate, Your Honor.
Ano po yun?
Hindi pa po ako natatawag sa Senado, Mr. Chairman. Although I've been joining the hearing.
Ibig ba ninyong sabihin, kayo po yung nasa pinakamata ng, parang you are in the eye of the storm. Sa pagdinig po nila, kayo po ang hindi nila tinanong? Ang PSDBM ay hindi po nila binigyan ng pagkakataon para magpaliwanag po, kagaya po ng ginagawa ninyo ngayon sa aming harapan?
Ako po, unang pagkakataon po ito para ma-clarify ko po yung mga questions.
Bakit hindi po ninyo hiningi sa kanila na makapagpaliwanag kayo sapagkat pagkatapos ng hearing, ini-interview po sila noong napakaraming mga media practitioners na parang kayo na po talaga ay inaakusahan ng napakaraming mga bagay-bagay at ngayon po ay maaaring nagtiteorize na po sila na meron pong mga hindi lang overpricing ngayon. Ang sinasabi po yata ay meron pong ghost delivery. Bakit hindi po kayo humingi ng sapat na pagkakataon na magpagpaliwanag kayo?
Iba po yung mga guest speaker na pinagtatanungan po nila about that, Mr. Chairman.
Ang ibig mo sabihin, Deputy Ombudsman, pinipili po nila yung kanilang gustong tanungin.
Maaari po, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, salamat po at ako'y tutuloy po sa isang panig, Mr. Chairman. Wala na po si Chairman Aguinaldo. Sino po kaya yung
Supervising
meron po bang gustong sumagot sa COA ngayon dahil nag-dispensa po si COA Chairman Aguinaldo? Sino po ba ang pwede naming matanong dyan sa COA ngayon? Pwede po ba malaman namin kung sino yung pwedeng pumalit muna kay Chairman Aguinaldo para masagot naman po kami?
Good afternoon.
Ayun na. Ma'am Rodora Ugay, is this you?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please answer the questions of DS Marcoleta.
Yes, Your Honor. It depends. It concerns the DOH because I am the supervising auditor of the DOH. But if it concerns the PSDBM, then the supervising auditor of the PSDBM is also present here, Your Honor.
Wala pong binigyan ng authority si Chairman Aguinaldo para siya muna po ang sumagot para sa kanya?
Your Honor, Mr. Chairman, I can answer
Sir.
only. Yes, sir. Who is that?
Bakit wala?
Kasi po, Mr. Chair, alam natin the origin of this developing story or controversy, if you will, which is now fueled by the Senate investigation, is the 2020 COA report on DOH, where 67.3 billion funds have been attended allegedly by deficiencies. Kaya magsisimula sana ako doon, Mr. Chair, kasi one of the 12 COA adverse findings as regards that amount is the 42.4 billion peso fund transfer na ginawa po ng DOH sa PSDBM. Will COA please confirm this? Yung isa po sa 12 na adverse findings ninyo ay tumutukoy sa 42.4 billion peso transfer ng DOH sa PSDBM, hindi po ba?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, Your Honor. Among
Hindi,
those
yes or no lamang? Yes ang sagot mo ba?
Yes, yes, sir, but not 42 billion transferred to the PSDBM because the 42.4 billion fund transfers consisted of the 41.4 billion transferred to the PSDBM and around 600 million transferred to the PITC and some 200 million transferred to local government units, sir. So the amount pertaining to the fund transfer to the PSDBM is only 41.4 billion pesos, sir, Your Honor.
Okay. Kasi sa report ninyo, 42.4 billion ang fund transfer na ginawa ng DOH sa PSDBM.
No,
So, okay.
Sir, it's to the procurement partner, sir, not necessarily to the PSDBM. So there is a breakdown for that, sir.
Okay, sa procurement halimbawa, sa PSDBM, magkano yung talagang total na pondo na naibigay ng DOH?
Mr. Chairman, it's 41,463,867,117.52 pesos.
Okay, so close to 42 billion pa rin, tama?
Yes, sir.
Okay, ngayon, 2 weeks ago or even more, sumagot ang DOH dito sa particular na adverse finding na ito na sinasabi kaya finlag ng COA yung 42 something billion pesos sapagkat yung fund transfer was not covered by a memorandum of agreement, sabi ng COA. Hindi ba ganon?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. At pagkatapos nun, meron pa silang isang dahilan, Mr. Chair, kung bakit ang halagang ito ay na-flag ng COA. Ito ay yung
sir.
Dapat daw nagli-liquidate ang DOH sa kanilang mga pending procurements bago sila muli mag-procure. Tama ba ito, Madam Auditor?
Yes, sir. That is the process, sir, because that is a fund transfer to be liquidated,
so
sir.
maliwanag ngayon na kaya na-flag ng COA yung pondo na tinransfer ng DOH sa PSDBM, dalawang bagay lang, dahil walang memorandum of agreement at saka yung requirement ng liquidation. Tama?
Yes, sir.
Sa makatwid, hindi finlag ang amount na ito dahil merong corruption. Tama?
Yes, sir.
Hindi finlag ang amount na ito dahil merong overpricing.
Yes, sir.
At lalong hindi finlag ng COA ang amount na to dahil merong ghost delivery.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sinagot po ito ni Secretary Duque doon sa unang pagdinig sa isang komite namin dito sa House of Representatives. At sinabi nga niya sa inyo na ang MOA hindi naman kailangan sapagkat ito'y mga bibilhin ng mga PPEs at mga related supplies na batay naman sa GPPB Resolution number 03-2020 ay hindi na kailangan naman ang MOA. Tama ba 'yon?
Yes, Secretary Duque said that and
Okay,
the
ngayon,
PSDBM said did not.
Ang sabi ni Secretary Duque noon, mga about 2 weeks ago or even more, ito'y partially na na-resolve na namin. Nakausap na namin ang COA tungkol dito sa alalahanin ninyong ito. Ang totoo naman pala, wala naman palang corruption, wala naman palang overpricing, wala naman palang ghost delivery. Kung hindi ay pinipilit lang ng COA, dapat merong memorandum of agreement at saka merong liquidation ng pending procurements. Tama ba yon?
Yes, sir. We did not say any overpricing, sir.
Okay. Kanina, sinabi ni, bago kami magsimula, inamin na rin ni Chairman Aguinaldo, at wala talagang overpricing. Maski doon sa presentation ni Deputy Ombudsman nakalagay din at sinabi na nga niya wala namang overpricing doon. Ano kaya ang dahilan? Bakit nagtutuloy pa yung pagdinig sa kabilang chamber, Madam COA Auditor?
Mr. Chairman, I would not know, sir. I would not know why they are.
Tinatanong lang naman kita, opinion mo lang naman eh. Wala, hindi ka naman makukulong sa opinion. Anong personal opinion mo?
Because as
Kamukha ng napapatunayan natin dito, kaya nyo lang pala finlag, inaalam lang nyo dapat merong MOA, dapat meron lamang anong tawag dito, liquidation. So
Yes, sir.
inaamin na ninyo, wala naman palang corruption, walang overpricing, wala naman palang ghost delivery. Ang tinatanong ko sa inyo, ay bakit naman hanggang ngayon ay nagpapatuloy pa ng pagdinig at ngayon ay meron silang anong opinion mo rito, Madam Auditor?
Sorry, sir, I cannot say anything to that on that, sir, because we were just invited, sir, to that to those hearings, and actually we are not. I myself was not being asked, so
Kayo
it's
rin ba ay
it's the
hindi rin
COA chairman being asked on.
Kayo rin ba hindi tinawag doon, Madam Auditor, para magpaliwanag kayo?
We were called, sir, but it's only we were called to those hearings, sir. We
You were
attended.
invited, but you were not allowed to speak and you were not
No,
allowed to explain.
Sir, I was not asked because the question is to the COA, so it is only our COA chairman who answers,
Oo nga.
sir, for the COA.
Okay, the
So, I
chairman
think
was there and
Yes
you were
po.
there, tama?
Opo.
Nagpaliwanag ang chairman na walang overpricing. At sinasabi niya sa amin, wala ring corruption. Sinabi ba niya yon sa Senate Blue Ribbon Committee? Nandun ka?
I don't remember he being asked about overpricing, sir. But on the corruption side, sir, I think COA already issued a clarification that the DOH audit report did not say or did not state
Ayun na nga.
anything
Ganito,
about.
huli ko na ito. Kailangan
Opo.
lang mapaintindi nating mabuti. Bago kami nagsimula, siniguro ni Chairman Aguinaldo sa amin, wala pong overpricing. At dito sa presentation ni Deputy Ombudsman, kinote siya at kinonfirm din niya na walang overpricing. At siya'y nag-attend noong September 7 sa Senate Blue Ribbon Committee. Ngayon, kung ito'y talaga sinabi at inadmit na ni Chairman Aguinaldo ng COA at nalaman na naman ng Senado sapagkat sinabi niya at nandun siya, ang ibig bang sabihin ito, hindi naniniwala sa COA ang Senate Blue Ribbon Committee?
Sorry, sir, I do not know the answer to that, sir.
Hindi, ito yung magiging laudable conclusion dito eh. Dito tayo mapupunta. Sinabi na ninyo ng COA chairman ninyo, pinagtibay niya na, inadmit niya na ang COA ang official na auditor ng kaban ng bayan ng Pilipinas, ng ating bansa. At sinabi sa Senate Blue Ribbon Committee, walang overpricing. Ibig ba sabihin ngayon, dahil nagpapatuloy pa sila ng pagdinig, hindi naniniwala sa inyo ang COA, tama? Isa ka na. Hindi pa kasi ako kumakain eh. Chairman, ganun din, gutom na kami rito. Kung talagang tinindigan na ni Chairman COA Aguinaldo na wala namang overpricing, walang corruption, ang pagpapatuloy ng pagdinig ng Senado ay katibayan lamang na hindi naniniwala ang Senado, particularly ang Blue Ribbon Committee, sa COA. Hindi ba ganun ang ating magiging conclusion, Madam Auditor?
Sir, I cannot
Sige,
comment on
natatakot
that,
ka sa Senate Blue Ribbon. Bahala ka.
But sir, as far as the DOH audit report is concerned, there are no observations on overpricing in the DOH annual audit report, sir.
Yun nga, kaya nagpapasalamat kami, nauunawaan namin. Ang totoo niya, nasasakyan namin ang paliwanag mula pa kanina. Ganun lang pala kasimple. At ngayon, tinindigan na kayo, inaffirm na, kinonfirm na ng COA, bakit nagpapatuloy pa yung Senate Blue Ribbon Committee? sa kanilang mga pagdinig. Ang ibig lamang sabihin, Madam Auditor, aminin mo o hindi po pinaniniwalaan ng Senate Blue Ribbon Committee ang admissions o ang inyong COA report. Tama po
As I have said,
O sige,
sir, I cannot
Mr.
comment
Chair,
on
wala na
that.
po ba akong panahon? O sige,
I'm sorry po, sir.
mag-a-avail na lang po ka sa aking susunod na round, Mr. Chair. Salamat po. Salamat po, Madam Auditor.
Thank
Thank you
you,
din po, sir.
Deputy Speaker, my Senator, Dante Marcoleta. The next to interpolate is the Honorable Pido Garbin. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Naririnig niyo
loud
ba
and
ako,
clear.
Mr. Chair?
Loud and clear.
Salamat, Mr. Chair. Magandang hapon. Salamat. Magandang hapon sa lahat po ng nanonood ngayon. Atin lamang ho ay dalawa pa lang yung nakapagtanong and we arrive at a conclusion and it was stated by the COA that there was no overpricing or there was no findings of overpricing with regard to the purchase of face masks and PPE by the DBM-PS for the Department of Health. So,
Sir, I suggest you turn off your video because you are staggered and you are not having a good signal there. Can you turn off the video to improve the audio?
should I turn off the video?
Please turn off the video because you cannot be understood here.
Okay na po ba?
Okay na. Ang ganda ng boses na, boss.
Well, salamat po, Mr. Chair. Kahit hindi nyo ako nakikita, at least naririnig nyo akong malinaw. So, kanina ho, the conclusion that we arrive as early as 2 interpellators elicited their question is COA maintained that there was no overpricing. The second issue that we want to arrive is whether the legal aspect of the procurement has been observed. And at the outset, Mr. Chair, ito'y pinatunayan ng Director at ngayon ay Deputy Ombudsman na yung kanilang procurement, mode of procurement na ginamit ay yung negotiated procurement under the emergency purchase provided by Republic Act 9184. But in order to further aid the pandemic response and allow the President and the executive branch to immediately procure the needed medical supplies and equipments, sinuportahan pa ito ng provisions ng Bayanihan 1 at Bayanihan 2. But be it noted, Mr. Chair, Director Warren, that the laws still require the most advantageous price to the government should the negotiated procurement be observed. One is the existing price data of the agency, the Department of Trade and Industry or other relevant agencies. And there must be a preliminary market scanning done by the agency showing prevailing market prices and practice. Ang tanong ko po, Director Warren, whether this was all observed by the DBM PS, considering that you have initiated the mode of procurement based on a negotiated purchase or emergency purchase under 9184.
Your Honor, Mr. Chairman, under negotiated procurement in emergency cases under RA 9184, a market price analysis is actually not required under the rules. You are actually allowed to directly negotiate, evaluate, and then award the contract. Bayanihan 1 exempts us even from RA 9184. But to answer your question, we went over and above the requirement of the law and did market canvassing. So even if we're not required, before we went into direct negotiation, we undertook market price analysis po using historical data or actual prices from available suppliers.
So,
Thank
Director Warren, so how many submitted the price quotation? Can you submit to this, or at least um, enumerate to this committee the list of the proponents during that time?
We require at least 3 prices, Your Honor. Gaya ng in-explain kanina, pwede po ito historical data within 6 months or actual prices ng available suppliers po. And then we also consider the price freeze of DTI or DOH if there is a price freeze.
And what was the result of the market scan?
Always, Your Honor, we procure the lowest available price, taking into consideration if it qualifies, if it complies rather with the technical specification and our delivery schedule.
Well, tama ho ba sabihin na yung sinabi nyo kanina, based on the technical specification of the Department of Health, lumabas ho na yung sa market scan resulted in a price range of 1,800 plus to 2,800 for the full PPE. Tama po ba?
Iba-iba po yon, pero that is correct. Yun yung sa presentation yung kinukot po ninyo, Your Honor.
And was the winning supplier the lowest and most compliant with the technical specification?
Yes, Your Honor. We do not. Opo.
Yes, you may proceed. Please proceed.
We do not. What happens is we are. You're talking about PPE sets po.
Yes,
so
the PPE sets.
Opo, we are given an agency procurement request by DOH for that item. It contains the quantity and the unit cost. So in that case, that's 2,000 pesos per set. So we never go beyond the budget of DOH since yun lang po yung budget nila. And then ang second layer po natin yan, in ensuring that we get the most advantageous contract, is we do market price analysis. Yun po yung na-explain before we go to direct negotiation po.
So madaling sabi nito, Director Warren, even if we procure or use the mode of procurement on the emergency purchase provided by Republic Act 9184, you still observe that win requirement to determine the winning supplier. Like what I've said is, lowest price ba yung nanalo? At ito ba'y most compliant with the DOH technical specification?
We use Bayanihan 1 po, not negotiated procurement under emergency cases for the PPE sets because Bayanihan 1 was effected already in March 26, 2020. And to answer your question, yes, we always chose the lowest complying, and it should be responsive to the technical specifications of the end user. Kasi hindi naman po pwede na mababa presyo niya pero hindi yun ang pinapabili ni DOH. So hindi rin po pwede yun. It has to be responsive to the technical specifications po, Mr. Chairman.
So, sino ho pula yung lowest price of the on the winning supplier at ito ba'y rationable na presyo compared to the previous purchases of the Department of Health?
Iba-iba po yung nanalo po. Marami na po tayong na-awardan ng PPE sets. Pero sa simula, ang pinagbilihan po natin is direct from China. So sila po yung merong supply. So wala po tayong mahanap na 8-piece set dito sa Pilipinas at that time at the quantity that was needed by DOH. So with the help of the IATF, we procured directly from China.
Mrs. Chair, let me course my question to the Department of Health, Secretary Duque. Secretary Duque, the lowest price of the winning supplier was 1,900 for the PPE. Do you think that was a reasonable price, Secretary Duque?
Yes, Your Honor.
And considering that in 2015, the Department of Health bought through a public bidding a PPE sets for 8 pieces for 3,500 pesos. Now, the PPE full set consisting of 9 pieces procured in 2020 was only for 1,910 pesos. Was that correct, Secretary Duque?
Thereabouts, correct, Mr. Chairman.
So, paano ho makukumpara? In 2015, was that an extraordinary circumstance?
No, Mr. Chairman. It was a rather normal situation. No pandemic, I believe, at that time.
And sa ngayon, when you speak about April of 2020, how do you consider it? Because that was at the height of the pandemic, at the height of the lockdown and travel restrictions. What was it?
I would reiterate, Mr. Chairman, that the price was very reasonable and went through the process of complying with the most reasonable pricing structure.
Now, how about the procurement from Pharmaly? Was the price of the face mask procured from Pharmaly reasonable to you?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that is correct. And this is also on the basis of the market scanning. I believe that was done by the PSDBM.
Because some base it, Secretary Duque, on the EMS price tag at 1350 for the face mask. Pero, establisado natin ngayon sa hearing na ito, tinanong kanina yung CEO o presidente ng EMS, that hindi nila kaya o they have wala silang stock noong April of 2020. Tanong ko, Secretary Duque, sa 1350 face mask, deliverable at the month of June. Sabihin na natin, pinili natin yung murang face mask at 1350. Wala tayong face mask from April to May. Dumating June dahil pinili natin yung murang mask na 1350. Sa tingin mo, at the span of 2 months na wala tayong face mask, ano kaya mangyayari sa ating mga health workers at sa ating sambayanan?
Mr. Chairman, if we allowed that to happen, if we had waited until the delivery by EMS in June, we would have lost a lot of lives. We would have had a collapsed healthcare system. Because can you imagine the overwhelming transmission that is going on in the healthcare facilities? And our healthcare workers are the most vulnerable. I would have envisaged, siguro, parang nakita ko na kung hindi tayo kaagad bumili, ay malamang maraming nagkasakit, nagkahawaan, na-isolate, na-quarantine, na-hospital, na-intubate. At pinakamabigat po sa lahat, pwedeng marami pang namatay. Kanya talagang hindi naman po pwede na pababayaan natin, mag-aantay tayo. Hindi po pwedeng dahilan po yun, Mr. Chairman. So we had to get, as soon as possible, as the law says, to procure as expeditiously as we can, which is explicit in the Bayanihan 1 law and also in other pertinent laws. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, I fully agree with you, Secretary Duque, because I'm trying to imagine on a face mask of which our co-equal house in the Senate, pinipilit nila na may mas murang face mask. But the facts that was established here is that, Mr. Chair, that was only available on the month of June of 2020. Then this exemption governs the procurement of
as expeditious.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, because at that time, marami na pong namamatay. And sinasabihan kami na we should procure. We were using negotiated procurement. We could do it in 6 to 10 days. Pero hindi kami makapag-compete po sa mga private entities. So when Bayanihan 1 was given to us, we were able to procure 900,000 PPE sets, I think from March 31 to April 10 po, Mr. Chairman. So that was really fast.
So after kayo na nagkaroon ng negotiated procurement. So narinig ko po kanina, I'm already using yung mga narinig ko sa discussion kanina. What you employed as a method is the negotiated procurement. Tama ba yon?
The official name given in the IRR is emergency procurement under Bayanihan 1. So that's the official modality given in the IRR. So we were allowed to directly negotiate, Your Honor. The IRR concedes that we're allowed to do that. The IRR even concedes that we can do verbal agreement and just issue the NOA. But we did not even dare to do that, Mr. Chairman. We still went on to ask for market price analysis, at least look at the existing historical data before we went into direct negotiation and award the contract.
So you went through, Mr. Chair, through all these processes, and it took you how many days in order for you to be able to complete them?
For the 900,000 PPE sets, given that we were only given 3 days to have it delivered, we were able to procure the entire thing in 10 days, Mr. Chairman. Pero different awards na po yon, different awards.
And within that particular period na sinet ninyo, you were able to deliver them as well. Or I mean, Mr. Chair, the supplier were able to deliver them.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, these were procured straight from China. So FOB China po ito. These were delivered by C-130. Yes.
So ilan yung in this particular instance where you had a modality of emergency procurement under the Bayanihan law, ilan lahat yung mga na-awardan ninyo na suppliers?
Hindi ko po matandaan, pero I remember my then Yusek Lloyd daw enumerating it when he was called earlier today. Marami-rami po, iba-iba po ang na-awardan po natin, Mr. Chairman.
So, Mr. Chair, may I request Attorney Lau, if he's still present?
Present, Mr. Chairman, I'm here. Is the inquiry about the face mask or the PPE sets?
Pareho, Mr. Chair, both the face mask and the PPE. So I just wish to understand, ilan yung mga nabigyan ng award, ilan yung nakapag-deliver, and how much yung mga na-deliver nila?
SunWest there are 17 PPEs, 17 companies that were able to be awarded, who got an award to deliver PPE sets. One is the number one supplier of PPE sets is SunWest Construction and Development Corporation, which delivered the quantity of 4 million pieces of PPE sets with 33%, comprising 33% of the total requirement. The second...
How much yung panag-deliver nila, Mr. Chair? How much was your price?
Depende po kasi sa panahon yan, Mr. Chairman. It depends on the time. So I don't have the details kasi depende yan kung early April, May, June, medyo mahal. July, August, September, pababa. Then on December, bumagsak talaga. Like the face mask lang, bumagsak tayo ng 1 peso 99 cents on December. So,
okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what is clear is this particular company delivered 33% of the total requirement.
Yes. Then
okay.
Formally
so 17. There were 17.
Yes. Then Formally was able to deliver
yes.
20%. Hafid and Erasmus was able to deliver 11.5%. Then Suzu was able to deliver 10%. And the rest of the companies, Bowman, Nika Trading, Chunsen, Element Trade, Avila Medical and Hospital Supplies, Biomedpro Pharmaceuticals, Metro Mobilia, Wenwa, Pacific Philippines Distributors Group Incorporated, Pacific Field Hong Kong Limited, Unimasters, Wamrus, MKG Tolentino Trading, all in all, they contributed to the rest of the graph. So sa PPE sets lang, if I may summarize, Avila Medical Hospital Supplies 1.8%, Biomed Pro 1.7%, Element Trade 2.1%, Bowman 5%, Nika Trading 5.4%, Chunsen 4.8%, Hafid 11.5%, Suzu 10.3%, Farmali 20%, and Sunwest 33%.
Ilan ulit yung na-deliver ng Farmali?
Ang na-deliver ng Farmali is around 20%. Total
20%.
delivery of all the 17 suppliers amounted to 12,158.
Excuse me, 8 minutes kung Salo.
Sa surgical mask
I
naman
already used 8 minutes, Mr. Chair, or I still have 8 minutes?
You still have 8 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
The surgical mask naman po, I will just run it through. The biggest supplier is Hafid and Erasmus Corporation at 44.77%, which is 141 million pieces. EMS Corporation, 100 million pieces at 31.63%. Unit Distributors Corporation, 60 million pieces at 19.19%. Farmali Corporation at 12,900,000 pieces at 4.08%.
Ilang percent, Mr. Chair?
4.8. 4.8. 4% only.
4% only. So, ito yung sa mask po, ito yung pinag-usapan ninyo, yung sinasabi ninyo. So, sa PPEs, ang na-deliver po, Mr. Chair, ni Farmali na pinag-usapan at naging issue is 20% dun sa PPEs and 4% lang yung na-deliver po niya sa masks.
Yes po, yes.
And how many, there are 17 suppliers dun sa PPEs and how many suppliers sa masks?
Sa face mask naman po, let me check. Sa face mask, there are 8 suppliers po.
8 suppliers ng face mask and Farmali was just able to deliver 4% of that.
4% po.
So, if you may hazard a guess, Attorney Lau, bakit ang focus ngayon ng lahat ng investigation doon sa Senado ay yung si Farmali? Samantalang isa lang naman po siya sa nag-deliver ng masks and 4% lang yung na-deliver niya. And sa PPE, isa lang naman po siya doon sa 17 and 20% lang yung na-deliver po niya. If you would hazard a guess, bakit kaya?
I think the only possible reason why they are being focused on is they were the first ones, aside from the Chinese companies, to deliver. Actually, EMS is the second one. That is why he is also one of the focused companies. Ang later po kasi, karamihan kasi, sa Bayanihan 2, nung open ang economy na DTI was successful together with PSDBM, DOH, encouraging with POI to encourage local suppliers to ramp up their capacity. Nagkaroon na tayo ng maraming suppliers. Pero
and,
ang
Mr. Chair, bibilisan ko na dahil ilang minuto na lang po ako. Doon sa inanalyze ninyo yung presyo po na ibinigay po nila, yung dineliver po nila, how is the price of Farmali compared to the other suppliers? Of the 17 dun sa PPEs and the 8 dun sa masks?
Relatively comparable sila, almost the same kasi sila ng mga pricing. The only significant is later on October, November, December, which another bulk of our procurement, bumagsak talaga ngayong December kasi China was able to have so many supplies kasi wala na bumagsak din ang COVID count nila, so they have so many blue supplies which Philippines benefited.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. May I ask si COA, Mr. Chair?
COA Supervising Auditor, please respond to the questions of Representative Salo.
Yes, sir, Your Honor.
Yes, magandang hapon po sa inyo, COA Supervising Auditor Rodora Ugay.
Good afternoon, sir.
Itong transaction po na ginawa po ng PSDBM concerning the purchase of masks and PPEs, napusisi po itong maigi ng COA?
Sir, with due respect, I am the supervising auditor of the DOH. Maybe I can pass you to the supervising auditor of the PSDBM. She is also present here, sir.
Yes, pero so ibig sabihin po nito, labas po ito doon sa inaudit po ninyo?
Yes, yes, sir, because we audited only the transfer of funds from the DOH to the PSDBM, sir. The procurement is done by the PSDBM and it's not under my audit
Under your
jurisdiction,
jurisdiction.
sir.
So
Yes,
sino
sir.
pong
Sir, may I be
Yes.
recognized, sir?
yes,
I am
Miss-
Mr. Ronquillo, sir.
Yes, please
the
proceed. Please
supervising
proceed.
the supervising auditor of the DBM,
yes.
which PSDBM team belongs. Regarding this, we are still reviewing the contracts, all the contracts of the COVID purchases from the COVID items. As of now, we have not finished, so we have no observations last year on that matter, sir. And
Wala pa kayong report, Mr. Chair, on this
Ay, wala
particular
pa.
matter?
Sir, because of the we have an observations of non-submissions of the contracts. Because of the lack of submission of contracts, we were not able to evaluate the contracts and the supporting documents. So,
Yes,
ngayon
okay.
lang po
Thank you.
ang
Thank you. So babalikan ko na lang po si Supervising Auditor Ugay. So klaro po, paulit-ulit niyang sinabi po kanina, first na wala po silang nakita na any overpricing or any tinge of corruption on this particular transactions.
Your Honor, Mr. Chairman, as far as the DOH, our audit report in the DOH is concerned, because we audited only the transfer of funds from the DOH to the PSDBM, so we will not be able to see any overpricing. So that's why we have no audit observation on overpricing, because the procurement was done in the by the PSDBM. So we will not be seeing those documents on the procurement, and we will only be seeing the documents for the transfer of funds to the PSDBM. And then after that, the supposed deliveries of the PSDBM as the liquidation to the fund transfers. So about the
Because I only
procurement
have 1
activities,
minute, so tatapusin ko na po ito, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
With respect to the DOH Secretary. DOH Secretary, kailan po nagkaroon po ng transfer mula sa DOH sa PSDBM ng pera? Sir Secretary? Okay.
Now,
Yes,
can you hear
Secretary.
me? Okay, thank you. The first APR, agency purchase request, is dated March 26, 2020 in the amount of 1.8 billion. So that's it, Mr. Chairman.
So, yung ginamit po na pinambili po ng COA, ng PSDBM, nanggaling po dito sa tinransfer ninyo, Mr. Chair, Mr. Secretary?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
So, that happened sometime March.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
And the directive, immediately, kung babalikan po natin si Deputy Ombudsman, for them to be able to deliver is sometime April 1 po yung deadline po nila. So that quick, tama po ba? Because you need to really have this particular PPE sets as well as the mask to be immediately delivered to you. At na-deliver din po ba ito, Mr. Chair, Mr. Secretary?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Absolutely.
So wala pong kinulang po dito at nadala rin po ito sa lahat po ng mga hospitals and all the other healthcare facilities na nangangailangan po nito.
Mr. Chairman, the deliveries were made through the Office of the Civil Defense. And from there, this was cascaded down to the different healthcare facilities, public-private hospitals, and other facilities, Mr. Chairman.
were all those delivered consistent or compliant with the requirements, with your requirements, with the specifications that you provided to PSDBM?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, there is an inspection process as to the quantity, the quality of the deliveries, which were inspected and also ultimately accepted. So there's a process that was faithfully complied with.
Did you
Mr. Chair.
receive any complaints, Mr. Chair, Mr. Secretary, that these particular items that were delivered are non-compliant?
There were some reports that I don't have the exact figure, but there were some reports of rejection of some components of the PPEs, like the shoe cover. They were too small. And then I think the coveralls were not waterproof. They would absorb. So we rejected them. But this was immediately rectified or resolved by the supplier. But just for the record, the inspection team was able to detect some components that were not compliant with the technical standards, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. As much as I still wish to pursue some questions, it is sufficient, I suppose, Mr. Chair, that the purchase was consistent with the Bayanihan law because of the requirement that it should be expeditious. And we commend actually PSDBM and the Department of Health that they were able to procure all of these requirements in such expeditious manner, in as much as we really need those particular PPEs and medical supplies immediately at that particular point in time. And I understand that the PSDBM went through the rigor process and compliant with what is required of them by law and the regulations. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Congressman Salo. Before we continue, I'd like to recognize additional members present. Representative Franz Castro, DS Christine Singson Mian, Deputy Majority Leader Tyrone Agabas, Representative Alan T., Representative Siriaco Gato Jr. Next to interpellate is the Honorable Hila Costa Jr. Sir, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Magandang umaga po sa ating mga kasama sa Committee on Good Government Public Accountability. Mr. Chair, my first manifestation is this is one of the biggest problem really of our, not only the national setting, but also in the local setting, is doon sa bakit matagal, no, yung 9184. Although we understand that the bidding process was instituted because pera ho ng bayan ang pinag-uusapan. But there is really a need para ho ripasuhin natin. Pero that's for another meeting, Mr. Chair. My first query, Mr. Chairman, is for our good Secretary Duque. Dahil ho may mga nagtatanong why effect the transfer from DOH going to the PSDBM? Kasi ang mga tanong at ang mga haka-haka, baka may anomalya dahil nga po pwede naman yung DOH mag-procure. Bakit ipinasa pa nila sa PSDBM, Mr. Chairman, sir?
May mga kadahilanan, Mr. Chairman. Ano po? Unang-una, hindi po kakayanin ng procurement absorptive capacity ng DOH. Yung napakamalaking bulto-bultong mga procurement requirement ng departamento para po mabigyan ng proteksyon, sapat na proteksyon ng ating po mga healthcare workers. No? Pangalawa, nung mga panahon na iyan, ang Department of Health ay marami po sa amin ang naka-isolate o naka-quarantine, meron po mga na-ospital, at kanya talagang kulang na kulang kami sa tao. At hindi po namin maisakatuparan ang mismong sarili namin na mga procurement. Pero ginagawa naman po, no? Meron po kami mga tinatawag na regular program procurement. Yung kunwari TB, HIV/AIDS, reproductive health, ginagawa na po yan ng Department of Health. At hindi naman po kasi, wala naman po kasing nakapag-predict na magkakaroon ng pandemya for 2020. So hindi po talaga ito napaghandaan para palawigin ang atin pong procurement capacity or capability. At isa pa po dito ay marami talaga po na actually 5 nga lang ang bids and awards committee ng Department of Health, at ang trabaho po ng mga bumubuo ng mga committee na ito designated lang po sila. Hindi po sila full-time, hindi kagaya ng PSDBM. They were designed organizationally, structurally to do procurement on a full-time basis. At marami po silang mga committees. So we needed their help because we were racing against time. Because we wanted to make sure that the health and safety of our healthcare workers are of paramount consideration, Mr. Chairman. So meron naman po kasing batas na for common use supplies and equipment, talagang minamandato ang national government na kunin ito sa PSDBM based on several laws, rules, and issuances. So katulad dyan, bibigyan ko lang po ng halimbawa, yung letter of instruction number 755 series of 1978, dalawang executive orders number 285 at saka 359 of 1987-1989. Haba po ng legal basis. Pero sa bandang huli, talagang kinailangan ng Department of Health. Dahil kulang sa tao, yung aming procurement absorptive capacity, limited, very, very limited. And we cannot afford to wait for too long a time. Otherwise, we will compromise the health and safety and lives of our healthcare workers. Yun po, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Salamat po, Mr. Secretary, na ang issue is expediency patungkol doon sa budget coming from the Bayanihan 1. My next question, Mr. Chairman, is addressed to the auditor of DOH. Madam Auditor, so narinig ko natin yung sinabi ng ating secretary. So based on your findings, wala hong mali doon, di ba? Sa pagta-transfer ng pera ng DOH papunta sa PSDBM para bilhin yung mga PPEs at mga face mask, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, yes, sir. Actually, the transferring of funds from the DOH to the PSDBM is actually a management prerogative, sir. So it's a decision of management, and COA cannot say that they should not transfer because fiscal responsibility belongs to the head of the agency. So if he sees fit, or if he sees that it is the most advantageous step to take, then he can transfer it, sir, and to the PSDBM and make it a procurement partner, sir.
So in this case, Mr. Chairman, because of expediency and kulang sa tao si DOH, nagkaroon ng transfer from DOH going to PSDBM. Now, my second question, Mr. Chair, for the benefit of our kabarangays here in my district and all over the Philippines, is relative to the annual report. Dahil nandun nang galing yung controversy. Ma'am, konting kapaliwanagan lang ho. Ano ba ho yung nature ng annual report? Kapag sinabi ba hong annual report, meron na ho bang mali agad? Pangalawa, actionable na ho ba yun, yung findings ng COA na yun? O meron pang pagkakataon si management, in this case DOH, para ipaliwanag kung relative doon ho sa findings ninyo, Ma'am Auditor?
Sir, Mr. Chairman, the annual audit report is a regular reporting, year-end reporting of the Commission on Audit, and it covers the results of our audit, financial and compliance audit. So we basically audits the financial statements, and while auditing the financial statements, there are some compliance issues that we come across, because all the transactions are recorded in the books of accounts, which are reported in the financial statements. So basically, the annual audit report is to issue an opinion on the financial statements of a government agency. And for the audit observation, sir, we offer, or we give audit recommendations, and that is to be for management to implement, and that we give them in accordance with the general section 89 of the general provisions of the GAA, the audited agency will give a report on their compliance with the audit recommendations within 60 days from receipt of the annual audit report. So they will still submit, sir, especially for those audit observations that saying that these documents were not submitted yet, so they can still submit.
So,
Sir,
Mr.
some
Chairman,
document.
kung naintindihan ko pong maigi, ibig sabihin kapag annual report o AOMs, not necessarily, Madam Auditor, Mr. Chair, na meron na agad hong anomalya, meron na ho agad korupsyon na nagaganap. Tama ho ba?
Mr. Chairman, yes po, sir, because the annual audit report reported only deficiencies and not shortages or overpricing or corruption issues, sir. So more on compliance issues, sir.
So based on yung pinag-uusapan ho nating 42.4 billion, is it a findings on the DOH side or findings on the PSDBM side, Ma'am Auditor?
On the DOH side, sir, because of the it's a fund transfer of the DOH, so it's a disbursement of the DOH, sir.
So
Fund
what were the
transfer.
salient features, Madam Auditor, relative to the 2020 findings of COA relative to that fund of DOH? Yung pinaka-ano lang ho, yung pinaka-buod noong audit observation po. Then nakapagsagot na ho ba si DOH patungkol doon sa mga bagay na kulang? Mr. Chair, Ma'am Auditor.
Mr. Chairman, the audit findings on the fund transfer is actually on the lack of memorandum of agreement and also the delay in the delivery of the needed equipment, sir.
So yung delay up to now po hindi pa nasasagot ni DOH kung lahat ho ba na deliver na, o let's ask Mr. Chair, someone from DOH, kung as to the annual audit report ay doon ho sa mga findings ay in terms of delay, Mr. Chair, ayos na ho ba ayos na ho ba o kulang pa rin, may delay pa rin ho?
Skip ko lang konti ito. Tagal.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, may I request Mr. Chairman to please acknowledge or recognize Undersecretary Carol Taino of Procurement and Supply Chain of DOH. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Yusek Carol, you're recognized.
Yeah, magandang hapon po, Mr. Chairman and Your Honors. Yeah, with regards to the delivery po, marami na po tayong na-deliver, marami na po ang PSDBM na na-deliver na mga PPE equipments, equipments as well as yung mga medical ventilator, nandito na po sa atin. Ang kailangan lang po namin, nasa warehouse na po namin yan, ang kailangan lang po namin ay ang procurement service delivery receipt. Pero most of the na-transfer po natin sa kanila ay na-deliver na po. And
okay,
we
Mr.
give
Chair,
the
just
report
ask
for that.
the DOH for a document stating yung mga kulang ho na nakita ni COA ay mapakita sa committee nito na talagang walang delay na nandyan na, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Your
To the
Honor.
DOH, please provide the requested documents before Sunday to the Secretariat.
Yes, Your Honor, Mr. Chairman.
Now, Mr. Chair, I will jump to another topic relative to PSDBM. It has been showed based on fact, Mr. Chair.
206,561. Metro Mobilia Corporation, 155,000 pieces at 1.3%. Wenwa Development Industrial Corporation, 62,000 pieces at 0.5%. Next slide, please. Pacific Philippines Distributors, 50,000 pieces at 0.4%. Pacific Field Hong Kong Limited, 28,000 pieces at 0.2%. Unimasters Conglomeration, 25,000 pieces at 0.2%. Wamrus Trading, 20,000 pieces at 0.2%. MKG Tolentino at 9,812, which is 0.1%. Now we go to the next slide, which shows this is the pie graph para makita po ninyo ang total chunk. The biggest chunk po dyan is the dark blue and the light blue. So we go to the next. Surgical mask po, this is the hierarchy of the percentage. The biggest quantity ang nakadeliver is a local company, Hafid and Erasmus Corporation. They are not a manufacturing company. They're only importing and distributing at 44.77%. The second highest is a manufacturing company established in the Philippines, repurposed for the purpose of producing surgical masks, medical grade surgical masks, EMS component assembly with 100 million pieces at 31.63%. The third one is Unit Distributors Corporation at 60,653,557 pieces, comprising 19.9%.
Attorney Lau,
Yes.
this is Chair Aglipay. Napansin ko lang na paborito niyo talaga ang Parmali number 4, no? So, paborito niyo ba?
Hindi po, timing lang po yan. Hindi po natin ano yan.
Oo nga eh. So, talagang ang paborito niyo talaga si Hafid Erasmus, hindi si Parmali. Di ba?
No. I apologize.
Mr. Chair, si Hafid and Erasmus is a local corporation or a foreign corporation, Mr. Chair?
Local po yan, local. It's a trading company po. Hafid and Erasmus, actually, as I can recall, one of the smallest companies yan na nagbibid. But later on, maybe they realized, kasi initially, people are afraid in dealing with the government, baka hindi pa bayaran, mga ganun. But when they build their aggressiveness, they realize that the government is paying well, they deliver well, as long as okay yung standards, they begin to become more confident. So kaya ngayon po, nag-change po yun as time goes by, like this December, ang pinakamalaki na po nating mga suppliers are all local. Local na po. And the Chinese companies, slowly wala na po. Except for...
Attorney, Mr. Chair, when you say local, yung mga face mask and PPEs are locally made or are they sourced out from China pa rin, Mr. Chair?
Actually, both yan. Si Unit Distributors Corporation, I believe they have a factory. EMS has a factory for surgical masks. Sa N95, I think we have Sunwest, who is capable of already producing N95 masks for the Filipino people. We have Conweb capable of providing coverall. Ang problem lang po natin is we don't buy coverall only, we buy it per set. So ito po yung mga data dun sa surgical mask. Let me proceed. Si Health and Wellness, 600,000. Si Cosmic, 300,000. 0.09%. Si PhilPharma Wealth, 0.03% at 100,000 pieces. New Life, 50,000 at 0.02. Yung kaya lang po iba-iba yung figure, yung iba maliliit pero they are still included in the graph. Ito po yung mga first na binila natin. Yung 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, ito yung mga first na bilhan natin kasi whoever has the stock, we buy. Kahit nga yun si 50,000, nagdala siya ng 50,000, we negotiate, we buy because we are in need. Then when we had the supplies already, we had
Mr. Chair, my additional question is based on your presentation, Attorney Lau Paniero. We use the emergency procurement process on Bayanihan Law 1 or we use the provisions of 9184 in terms of the procurement process in your list?
Sa Bayanihan 1 po, ang ginamit po natin is negotiated procurement. However, we borrowed some of the safety measures of RA 9184. But
for example, Mr. Chair, the Hafid and Erasmus Corporation, was it via the procurement method of Bayanihan Law 1 or via the procurement method of RA 9184?
Dalawa na po yan kasi si Hafid and Erasmus, I think, delivered both under Bayanihan 1 and Bayanihan 2. They started Bayanihan 1, then we used Bayanihan 1 law. Under Bayanihan 2 po ang ginamit natin. So depende on the timeline that they delivered.
Okay. Time na daw, sabi ni Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'll just palista na lang ako sa second round. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Attorney.
Maraming salamat.
Thank you, Congressman Gil Acosta.
So that's probably the reason why there are discrepancies or differences in the prices. And also, one of the consideration is the ability or the capacity of the supplier to supply or to deliver the required quantities in April as well.
Yes, I understand. Baka pwedeng pa-clarify, Mr. Chair, kay
Lloyd Lau po.
Attorney.
May be allowed to answer.
Yes, sir. Attorney Lloyd, please answer the questions of Honorable Committee.
To respond to the question of the chairman, we just like to put some dates on the question as an answer to the question. We bought 16 pesos sa New Life Pharmaceuticals, 50,000 pieces on March 20, 2020. Ano lang yan, kakaputok pa lang ng COVID. So actually, mataas na yung 16 bigla dyan eh. Nag-jump yan from around mga 12 to 16. So we were only able to buy 800,000 pieces. We did not limit our procurement. In fact, that's the only available they have. If they had more, we would have procured more from New Life. Then on April 6, meron po tayong 100,000 pieces kay PhilPharma Wealth at 27.49. Yan lang din po ang available ni PhilPharma Wealth. So kung may marami pa po silang available during that time, bibilin din po natin. Then si Pharmally was able to bring 500,000 pieces at 27.72. Binili din po natin yan. Then on April 14, we also bought 2.4 million pieces at 22.50 kay Pharmally. Now, ang next po is 300,000 pieces kay Cosmic Technologies at 22.50. Yan din lang po ang available nila. Then bumaba po tayo at 22 pesos, 10 million pieces at April 20 kay Pharmally po. Yan lang din po ang available. This first procurement natin until April 2020, on-hand stocks po yung mga bili natin, yung mabilisan that they are able to deliver on the date that they are saying or at least a couple of days na magbebenta. Now, ang key po doon na issue is we have to have the supply on date. Kasi hindi po zero stock ang issue dyan. Ang issue dyan, negative stock tayo. People need to use the mask yesterday and we need to provide it today. So kaya doon po medyo mahal yan. Now, bumaba po tayo bigla kay EMS to 13.50 which is technically half of 27 pesos. Ang reason po nun, kasi meron tayong proposal from them kasi DTI was stopping them na sinong gusto mag-manufacture sa Philippines kasi kailangan talaga. EMS was very aggressive. That's the keyword eh. Aggressive kasi lahat takot, but EMS, the local company, was aggressive enough. No, we're willing to risk our company. Diba? We will get into that to help the country. So we made a negotiation. Sabi namin sa kanya, if you are going to produce, how many can you produce in a month? And we will make a good deal. Kasi averaging natin sa consumption upon data of April and May, umaabot tayo ng 5 to 10 million consumption per month. Sabi ni EMS, kaya namin mag-provide at around 5 to 10 million per month, sabi nila. So nung sabi ni EMS, sige, how fast can you enable your company to provide? Give us at least 1 month to repurpose, get all the licenses, get all the machines and the raw materials. So we made a close deal with EMS at half the price. Kasi bulk din yan, 1 year supply. Pero they were only able to supply on, dapat ang arrangement is May, magsusupply na sila April yung deal. So the stocks that we were able to buy from Pharmally, from Cosmic, from PhilPharma, and New Life, yun ang ginamit natin to sustain for the period of April to May, habang hindi pa ready si EMS. But when we already have contract with EMS, sinuspenda natin lahat procurement from other importers or other suppliers because we were already banking on the word only of EMS na kakayanin nila. Di ba? Wala, hindi namin nga, we just check all their basic requirements as standard na ginagamit namin. OSS nila, ITR nila, mayor's permit, yun lang, hindi na namin chinek na, bakit may capacity ka ba talaga? We just bank it. These people are very serious and committing themselves to provide the mask for the Filipino people. Sige, we will commit with you likewise. So on May, nagpadala sila ng sulat. Music Law, medyo may problema pa kami sa materials, madidelay lang po tayo ng konti. But rest assured, magpapadala na kami. On June 1, they were able to supply. Then on June 28, dire-diretso na sila 8.5 million pieces. That stabilized actually the supply chain as far as surgical mask is concerned. Nagkaroon lang tayo ng concern later on nung nag-price drop talaga ang DTI and DOH to 9 pesos. So nagkaroon tayo ng concern with EMS kasi their price is already higher than the SRP, suggested retail price. So doon lang tayo nag-change ng pricing arrangement with them, contractual arrangement. Now, because of the flooding of the items that we have, and because of the effort of DTI, Board of Investments,
Boss, 6 minutes.
PSDBM.
So mga kabanat, i-end ko na to, no? Dahil sobrang haba na. Dahil medyo may gagawin pa tayo. No? So yun lang muna. So yung i-highlight ko na lang siguro dito yung video ni Congressman Marcolita. Kasi ang kasunod nitong magtatanong mga sila ni Brusas, Ilago, yan, medyo maraming hindi excited din dyan sa pagtatanong. So, end ko na ito mga kabanat at maraming salamat sa nanonood.